Good afternoon and welcome to the July 17th Clearwater City Council meeting. We are starting the meeting as is the CRA, Community Redevelopment Agency. And I'd like to see if we could have an approval of the minutes from the June 12th CRA meeting.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you very much. Are there any citizens to be heard regarding items not on this CRA agenda? Okay. Let's go to new business. 4.1, approve the closeout of the Commercial Beautification Grant Program and reallocate remaining program funds.
Good afternoon, trustees. Ann Lopez, Senior CRA Manager. At the March 15th, 2021 Community Redevelopment Agency meeting, the trustees approved the Commercial Beautification Grant Program. As of June 23rd, 2023, there have been 3 grant agreements and only 1 completed improvements, which were paid out in the amount of $5,683. Staff is recommending that we close out the Commercial Beautification Grant Program and allocate the remaining balance to our business renovation program. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments on this item? Okay. Do we need a motion on this? Okay, can we have a motion, please?
Move to approve 4.1.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you. 4.2.
Approve changes to the Business Renovation Grant Program to improve visual appearance of commercial properties through exterior and interior improvements and authorize appropriate officials to execute same.
The CRA trustees approved the Business Renovation Grant Program in August of 2022 to help reduce blight and encourage private investment in downtown. Through the success of the Business Renovation Grant Program, staff has looked at ways to improve its current structure that best aligns with the goals of the CRA, as well as the needs of the commercial business owners and tenants. The recommended changes that we have are to create a total reimbursement of 50% of the total project cost not to exceed $100,000, provide an upfront funding in the amount of $25,000 at the approval of the CRA director, and grants will be awarded to business owners and commercial tenants. With your approval just a couple minutes ago, the project funds from the commercial beautification, this will bring the available balance to the business renovation program to $493,303.
Okay. Any questions or comments on this item? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So I had a couple of questions about, first of all, I think it would be nice in the future if we're looking to revise this business renovation grant program to have an attachment of the actual business renovation grant so I can look at what the changes are and what does it actually say. It just helps a little bit. What assurance do we have that, you know, this is a good investment? And one of the concerns I have, and again, you can correct me if I'm wrong, providing an amount up to $25,000 for upfront funding at the approval of the CRA executive director. I mean, how do we know that money isn't going to be lost and we're not going to see anything for it? And it kind of ties in with a third bullet that grants may be awarded to business owners or commercial tenants. And is a business owner the same as a property owner? So they own the property?
No,
Okay.
no. So this would be specific to the owner of the business. They could also be the property owner in some cases, but this would be most lent towards the business owner. When we've gone out and talked with a lot of the business owners in downtown, we found that it wasn't necessarily the landlord who needed the funding, it was the actual person going into the space. Mm-hmm. They needed to be able to make things ADA compliant, mm-hmm. provide plumbing, mm-hmm. Electrical work. That would be required of them to receive their COI. Mm-hmm. So that's why we decided to provide the grant this way. The upfront funding, that was something else that we heard a lot of, is I really want to be able to do these changes to my business, but for one reason or another, I just don't have the money to be able to pay for everything up front. So this would be on a case-by-case basis. We'll talk to them, we'll work something out with the legal department to make sure that they account for their funds. So as also being the one who handles the financials for the department, that's something that I always ask for, is if we do provide you with upfront funding, before we do give you more money, you have to show us how you've spent that money so far.
Okay, and so these are going into, it's a business renovation, so it's about making that building more attractive or usable.
Yes.
Okay, and then the difference between so I understand what a property owner is. The owner of a business and a tenant. So somebody's going to own a business, isn't that person necessarily the tenant that's in there?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not,
They're the same.
Okay.
But we do have some business owners who are also the owner of the building.
okay, all right. Yeah, I just wanted that clarification. You get worried about allocating a lot of funds for making a structure, a building usable, which is great, but then the business never pans out, And so does that grant have a repayment if it doesn't open or something like that?
I think that's structured in the grant agreement.
Okay, some kind of clause about you've got to, okay, thanks.
Okay, anything else? Is there anyone from the public who wants to speak to this item? Not, do we have a motion?
Motion to approve agenda item 4.2.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, unanimous. Thank you. 4.3, please.
Approve amendments to Sidewalk Cafe Furniture Grant Program and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same.
The Community Redevelopment Agency offers financial assistance to qualified business owners and commercial tenants seeking to furnish approved sidewalk cafe areas within the downtown core. Currently, the Sidewalk Cafe Furniture Grant Program makes available a one-time grant of up to 75% of the total project cost, up to a maximum of $2,500. CRA staff is recommending an increase in this grant amount from $2,500 to $7,500. This will aid downtown businesses in creating a higher quality outdoor dining space for social interaction, using more durable and sustainable commercial furnishings, which will better accommodate the anticipated increase in foot traffic and the business, as well as continue to aid in the beautification of downtown Clearwater.
Any questions or comments on this item? Anyone from the public wish to speak to this? Not, do we have a motion?
Move to approve agenda item 4.3.
Oh, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, unanimous. Thank you. 4.4, please.
Approve amendments to the fiscal year 2022-2023 Downtown Community Redevelopment Agency budget and adopt CRA Resolution 23-01.
This item is the amendments to our downtown CRA budget. For our operating budget, the adjustments made to the budget are to reflect actual expenditures to date. And as part of the amendments to our capital improvements, we have added a project code for the downtown Mercado, as well as including the $65,000 transfer in from the community engagement. That will be part of the art installation in the Mercado that the trustees approved. We've also increased our economic development city project by $589,227 to account for funds transferred from prior year. And we did decrease our transportation county project by $187,950 to adjust for the actual increment revenue that we received from the county this year.
Any questions or comments on this item? Yes, ma'am.
If we look on the budget, page 2 of 2, I just had a question. So we expected or projected having more TIF money from the county. We're shy about $190,000. Is that correct? Do we have any idea why? Has that happened before? Or?
I'm not sure. I would ask Eileen.
Okay.
That's the final adjustment to values after the value adjustment board and everything is complete with the county. So we work off estimates in the beginning, and then that's the true up once it's finalized from the county.
Any other questions, comments?
Yep, I have, so our balance is a little over 12 million here at the total line.
Yes.
Is any of that encumbered?
Yes, there is some that is encumbered in our housing county for about $3 million for Archway Community Gardens, which we're here.
Okay. All right. And that's it for Archway? Once we pay the $3 million, then we're all set?
Yeah,
And
that's
then we,
that's
so we'll
what's
have
approved so far for them. Yes.
11, 12, okay. So we'll have $9 million to work with?
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, and That's it, thanks.
Okay, anyone else? Yes, sir.
Can you give me a construction schedule of when the Mercado's gonna, there's been a big pile of dirt there for a long time.
So last we heard from Kat, who's the project manager on that, we're looking at September. For it to be finalized and everything open in September of this year.
Oh, open in September? Okay, so they're gonna be starting in August?
Yeah, we're months away. It's right around the corner. We're very excited.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone from the public want to speak to this? Not, I'll let the attorney read the.
Thank you, Mayor. Resolution number 23-01, a resolution of the Community Redevelopment Agency of the City of Clearwater, Florida, adopting the budget amendments for the CRA fiscal year 2022-2023 annual operating budget, providing an effective date.
Motion to approve agenda item 4.4.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you. 4.5, please.
Amend the agreement for the sale and development of property located at 1250 Cleveland Street and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same.
Archway Clearwater Gardens LLC submitted a modified schedule for consideration as well as a modified design for the community garden, which would move from the rooftop to the ground. Staff recommends approval of this amendment. Clearwater Gardens Affordable Housing Development, located at 1250 Cleveland Street, was selected by the Florida Housing Finance Corporation for a 9% tax credit award. In reviewing the development agreement dated August 23, 2021, and the first and second amendments between the CRA and Archway Gardens LLC, it was noticed that several of the dates needed to be updated based on the timeframes set forward in that agreement. Outlined in the agenda are the milestone dates as outlined in the original agreement and the new modified proposed milestone dates. And if you have any questions, I have Brett Green and David Heelslip here from Archway Gardens to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments on this one? Yes.
I just have a comment about the garden, and it makes perfect sense. I don't think it was articulated in the agenda item, but I reached out about why that garden was going to be moved from rooftop to abut the community garden that we have there now, of which, full disclosure, I used to have a plot there. I don't anymore because I couldn't keep it up. But the people there, the gardeners there in our community garden are real invested in that garden, and they're very sensitive about what's going on around them, as you all know, because they email every now and then and want to know. So I just wanted to know if you could reach out to their leadership and just let them know about the change, and what do you envision that abutment looking like, because there was one point that Bill Poulin, who was the master gardener, but he's moved away, had dreams of making that part of the property a children's garden that would expand theirs. But, however you want to develop it is in a garden. But just want to express that sensitivity to those people.
Yeah, absolutely. And for the record, Brett Green with Archway Partners. We're not gardeners in any way, shape, or form, so we would definitely look to them actually to come up with a plan for it in conjunction with our landscape architects and kind of our space planners to make sure that if they want us to be cohesive, we can certainly do that. If they want to have the area separation, we could do that as well. We were just trying to get the funding and all the mechanics of actually making the deal possible done first. And then there's a whole bunch of things that we'll have to work on with the community garden, in partnership with them. We'll have to, make sure the lease fits all the criteria for all of our financial partners. And I think it's a legacy lease that we'll have to, make sure that, works for them and all that. So it won't be any type of issue, but we just have been trying to work on the viability of the project first, and then we'll go, coordinate with the folks at the community garden.
Okay. Well, they've been assured that they're going to stay there.
Oh, yeah, and that's,
Okay.
it's also all in these agreements, and it's all part of the DRC approval that we've been working on for quite some time, and there's no doubt it's going to be there. We're going to be,
Well, I can share the contact information for Layla. And
Yeah, that would be great.
reach out to them, just give them a heads up.
Yeah, for sure.
Good. Okay, thanks.
Any other questions for the gentleman? Yes, sir.
I want to congratulate you on your 9% tax credit award. That was impressive, and took another look at your design again. What a beautiful project. That'd be great. I'm looking forward to seeing it go up.
Thank you. We're super excited. We've been at it for quite some time, and these projects take time. We appreciate everyone's long-term support for the deal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, thank you very much. Anyone from the public want to speak to this item? If not, do we have a motion?
Move to approve item 4.5.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you. Director's report?
I do have a director's report, although today it'll be a senior manager's report. So to start off, CRA staffing. We have completed candidate search for our 3 CRA specialist positions. 2 of them will begin on July 31st, and the 3rd will begin on August 14th. We are very excited. We had a total of 29 applicants for these 3 positions and did 14 interviews. For North Greenwood, the ARPA grants. All 25 grant agreements have been drafted and have been forwarded to legal for review. Once cleared, the CRA will forward the agreements to the ARPA grant awardees for review and schedule a meeting via Teams or in person if they so choose to discuss the terms and deliverables. Once we have a signed agreement from the recipients, we'll start working on dispersing funds. The Citizens Advisory Committee for the North Greenwood CRA, we've devised a process for onboarding and appointment of the 5 members for that committee for the North Greenwood CRA, and our process will be outlined hopefully by July 31st. The CRA will advise the trustees and the Pinellas County Board of County Commissioners of a process. Our goal is to have this committee in place by September. I know that Jay has reached out to the St. Pete CRA to talk to them about getting an example of bylaws and things that they have for their committee that will help us in this process. We're looking at branding and creating a website for the North Greenwood CRA. And we're hoping to launch a survey to solicit into the community and ask for public input about a logo, desired content, and the ideal elements and features that will be included on this website. The grand opening of Coachman Park and the launch of the Sound have had several impacts on downtown CRA, and we would like to highlight some of them. The increased footprint, the foot traffic has yielded filled restaurants inside and out, as well as a great mix of people in downtown. The CRA Coachman Perks program was a great success and helped drive Coachman Park attendees back to our downtown local merchants. We've had 5 new inquiries from entrepreneurs looking to do business in downtown since the opening of the park, and we're following up with scheduling meetings to learn more about what their vision is. We have, with your assistance, have created new grant programs that our CRA manager, Vicki Shire, has been out spreading the word. And we're going to use some of these programs to help us, to guide us in creating programs and grants for the North Greenwood CRA as well. We have a survey that's out in English and Spanish to solicit information about the grand opening of the Mercado and the East Gateway area. We've pinpointed the date of Saturday, September 30th for a grand opening of the Mercado and in celebration of Hispanic Heritage Month. This will be our 4th and final event in the 2023 Living the Culture series. Planning details are still underway and we will release soon, however, please save the date. Cleveland Streetscape project is functionally complete. There are some items left to take care of and a few punch list items to wrap up. We are currently updating our log of property owners, business and commercial tenants in the downtown CRA. We are identifying vacancies and strategies to come up with innovative ways to address them as well. Our goal is to have this log updated and current and going into September. We will present a full report to the trustees at the September CRA meeting. That's all I have for you.
Any questions or comments? Yes, ma'am.
So I have a couple. You said you've created new grant programs. Vicki has been spreading the word.
Yes.
What are those new grant programs?
So we have For the Gulf to Bay section in the downtown gateway, we have an economic recovery grant program. We have a interior exterior facade grant program that's for all of the downtown CRA. That one allows up to $25,000 of interior and or exterior, so a maximum of 50. We have the revisions to the Sidewalk Cafe grant, which you approved today, the revisions to the business renovation grant. And I know that I'm missing one. I know that there's one more. Oh, restaurant operations. That's a new one that was also created that allows up to $3,500 for brick and mortar restaurants for just small items, repair to a refrigerator or, restaurant equipment.
Okay. That survey that's in both English and Spanish, tied to the opening of their Mercado, is that on social media and our website?
It has been pushed out on social media, although Vicky's going door to door talking with folks. It's very simple. It's only a couple questions. If they've heard about the Mercado, what they would like to see in the grand opening, what day they would prefer. Those are the type of questions we're asking in that survey.
But we've set the grand opening at September 30th?
Yes.
Okay. So kind of what they'd like to see and...
Yes.
Okay. You said the Cleveland Streetscape project is functionally complete, except for some punch list items?
Yes, so meaning that it's drivable.
All lanes are drivable, everything's open, now we just clean up the sides and make it pretty? Okay. And then I had a question about, okay. So we're good with the update on the grant distributions for ARPA, except that I thought at our last meeting, these drafts were supposed to be ready at the end of June. Do you have any idea when it's going to be out of legal and when it's going to be in the hands of grant awardees?
Yeah. I just got it, so we'll be looking at it as soon as we can. We just got them. They're pretty voluminous, so I promise we'll get to it as soon as possible, but we literally just got it within the past several days. So
Okay.
make it a priority, but it's,
Okay.
given we have to be careful, particularly with ARPA funds, because there's a lot of treasury rules associated with them. So a lot of it has to do with how we report the spending to treasury. It's not just blank checks that we hand out to the community. There's expectations from treasury and how we report that information. Otherwise, we can lose qualifications for federal funding in the future. So it's one of those things where we have to painstakingly review each one, and because each grant is unique, it's going to take a little time to get through each one. So.
Well, that makes sense, but I thought that we decided to put all those ARPA funds into like our general fund so that we had a lot more flexibility and not tied to ARPA reporting.
Sort of. We are using it as revenue replacement, which allows us to be more flexible in how we spend the funds, but there are still treasury reporting requirements. So when it comes to grant programs, particularly for the community, we still have to report to treasury, particularly when you get into large dollar amounts. So there are some reporting issues that have to go along with that. And beyond that, just public accountability issues for making sure that when we're handing out checks to the private sector, that the council knows and the public knows that where that money is going and how it's being accounted for. So, you have my commitment to get through it as quickly as possible, but we literally just got it.
Okay.
So.
Okay, I understand. Is there a priority list that you have? Like which ones are you going to go through first?
Dr. Matthews kind of sent them to us as a batch. She didn't indicate one priority, say, necessarily over the others. So barring some direction from the CRA to the contrary, we'll likely just do it the order in which we received it. So unless they have a preference of one order over the other, my plan would be to get through them in the order in which they're received. So there's that aspect of it. I will say more generally, one of the things that we'll have to look at in legal is that as our new CRA comes online, how we assign workloads and staffing.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah.
We're kind of already at a point in legal where we could really use another FTE already, and that's before the new CRA has been brought online. So that's something that I'm looking at pretty closely to manage our workload in legal. It may be that we need to rely a little bit more on outsourcing a few things, or it may be that in the coming budget year that we are finally at that point where I actually have to ask for another FTE. And I've not wanted to do that up until now because lawyers are expensive, but we may be at that point where it's more cost effective to insource than it is to outsource. So I didn't come today prepared to have that full conversation with council, but I also wanted to just mention that because we do have the new CRA coming online.
Yeah. And
so we're going to have to think about how to best manage our workload as some of that new work comes online.
Absolutely. That makes sense. Are there plans to have a CRA dashboard?
Yes, that is something that we did see, the one that was created for recycling, and Jay was very interested in looking at creating one for CRA.
I think that'd be good, and,
Yes.
2 tabs or whatever,
Yes.
however we want to do the 2 different tabs. Is the CRA involved in activating, negotiating, or funding any projects for our some shared space in the main library? Any updates on that?
I'm not aware of any updates on that.
Okay. And then,
CRA is not funding anything in the library. We've not talked to them about that.
okay, just didn't know if it was part of the CRA funds, because I know we funded Clyde Butcher stuff and.
Yeah, I'm not sure anything in there would be in their plan. But,
Okay. It's a possibility for those funds, though, right? Because it
they can
falls
spend
within our
money
CRA.
to implement their plan. So I'm not aware that there's anything in the library in particular that's focused on that. So it may depend on what the item is.
Okay. And then the last thing is, so I understand that there's a property in North Greenwood at like the corner of Tangerine and MLK. So it's kind of by the police substation, and there's a United Way attached to there. And so I think it's on the southeast side that the Urban Leadership Coalition has expressed an interest in having that part of the economic development along MLK. And I know that a while ago we purchased the Elks property kind of for that reason, right? We wanted it in city control as a big catalyst for, at that point, it was the impending CRA. Now we have the CRA. So can you give me any kind of an update on any discussions that have been had about that property, where that stands? Because to me, knowing this much, that seems like a key strategic location for our economic development in the North Greenwood CRA, especially because it's between Cherry Harris Park, the Elks, and the Rec Center. I mean, it all flows together pretty well, I think, for revitalization.
So I'm not familiar with the project or the property that you're talking about, but I could definitely look into getting some information to share with you. I'm not sure if Mr. Delk has any information.
We've had a couple of appraisals on that property. The appraisals have come in around $70,000 or $80,000, or some substantial amount less than what the asking price is. So right now, our inclination was not to move to purchase the property because of that discrepancy between asking price and appraised value. And also, I think there's some concerns that there's a substantial amount of renovation that needs to be done to turn the building into office and renovate it. So I think there's some additional costs associated with that. So right at this time, I think we were, last I talked with Jay, within the past week, we were going to inform whoever had the property for sale that it's not our intention to pursue it at this time at the asking price.
So, all right, I think, when we think about the cost of the Elks and the cost to demolish the Elks, and us understanding that that was a key location, we put a bunch of money into that. And to me, my information is that building's appraised at like $350,000 to $375,000. I think that's a wise use of our money. I think we really need to think about buying that property. I think it's a key piece of property in the North Greenwood CRA.
Well, I'll take another look at the appraisals. That's not what I've been told about the appraisals relative to the asking price. And then if the trustees think that the city should be more aggressive with the acquisition of property in that area, then we can take a second look at it. But I think the first thing I would be inclined to do is to confirm the amount of the appraisals, because what I've been told is that it's substantially under the asking price. And if it were within, a few $1,000s one way or the other, that would be one thing, but within the percentage that it seemed to me it was too far above asking, or above appraisal.
Are you guys familiar with the property? Can you envision where it is? The corner of Tangerine and MLK? So kitty corner from the police substation. It's on the same side of the street as Cherry Harris. It's like a couple streets. So what do you think about the value of that property? Especially in proximity to Cherry Harris, the rec center, the Elks.
I would like to see Jay's vision first, and then I want to see the appraisals before I make that decision.
Well, I think when we talk about Jay's vision or the vision, I think we have to go back to that spring meeting, and I think you were there at North Greenwood Rec Center, which was facilitated by Forward Pinellas, about what the vision of the community would look like, and it included an active MLK. There's a lot of residential there along MLK, and this is one that's was a business and has the potential to be a business.
I think my understanding is that the coalition may want to use this for some office use. My point is, I think that I would recommend that we give Jay an opportunity to come back here, discuss the nature of the property. We can provide you additional information on what the appraised value is versus the asking price. What we may think need to be done is an investment in the property to make it usable for the purpose intended. And then lastly, does that comport with what we have as priorities for the implementation of our plan? So I think that's kind of the basis of what I would want to bring back to the trustees to have a complete discussion of this property and decide whether or not we want to go in for somewhere probably in the $350,000 range for the property, and then what additional expense that might entail. I think the trustees, need to have that information in order to make a good decision or determination about that.
Okay, I think that's more than reasonable.
If that's fair,
That's more than reasonable, yes, I think, in my opinion.
I think so, but I think it's important to communicate then with the person who's speaking for the property owner, because I think the property owner passed away and there's a legal representation that the city is not ready to dismiss consideration of this property.
Well, right now, the appraised value is more than we think should be paid for the property. So at this point, we would not administratively pursue the acquisition of the property. If, however, the trustees feel differently about that, then we can revisit the acquisition of the property and have that discussion with you.
Well, can we send a message that we're waiting for more information before we make a decision on that property?
Yeah, I'm not prepared to make a decision without having the
Sure.
numbers or other options. If it's over the appraisal, are there other options that we can give to the coalition that will serve your objectives and be more conducive to the general vision? So at this point, I don't have anything before me to make an objective decision.
I think we need to articulate with them that we're not willing to pay over appraisal, and if they're willing to negotiate, then that's fine.
We'll confirm that.
Okay.
Like I said, I've had a few discussions about the appraisal list, so if Councilman Beckman believes that somewhere the appraisals are higher than what I've been told, then obviously that's a factor. But regardless, I think we would not unilaterally pursue the acquisition of the property without some support from the trustees in doing so, because as you're aware, we've got a very large, aggressive plan for North Greenwood, and that does include activation and a lot of business improvements. So where, when, and how we prioritize our dollars to do that is extremely important, and we want to make, along with you, an educated decision about how that ought to be done.
Well, and I think just to be clear, I think that property is envisioned as kind of mixed use, like a restaurant in the bottom and office above, but I could be wrong, so it's not just office
I think that's true.
on a key corridor,
Very,
Okay, let's come back with more information, and we'll take it up at the next meeting. Yes, ma'am.
So coincidentally, last week I was actually thinking about this. You know, there's a lot of general statements being made about downtown and vacancies and all that. And so I was actually thinking of logging it myself. So I'm very relieved that you guys are doing it, because I want real numbers. How many are empty? How many are being rented? How many are willing to be rented? How many are under construction for more than a year or so? So those numbers to me will be very valuable.
Yes.
Instead of blanket statements that we've been hearing lately. So thank you very much for being proactive and
Yes.
giving us those
Sure.
objective
Absolutely.
data.
Well, I was going to ask you about the same thing. I'm happy you're putting together that database. Are we currently aware of any property owners who are actively interested in putting a business into their buildings?
Not that I am aware of at this time. I know that we do have some numbers, but those are quite outdated. I think they're actually from before COVID, so we definitely do need to update those numbers, but I'm not aware of any currently.
One last thing, I guess, if we talk about numbers or dates, any update on the whole development at the Nolan with all that restaurant?
I did reach out to them. They state that they're working pretty much on schedule. Last week, we did have a downtown development board meeting. One of the ladies that was in the audience is actually part of the Nolan, who was hired to help fill the market space. So I did reach out to her, and I'm getting her in touch with Jay to sit down and have meetings, as well as some other partners groups that we have worked with in the past to see about getting help to get that space filled.
So they state that they're on schedule? but
Yes.
Do we have an opening date?
No, I have not received one. Our goal is to bring to you maybe in August another formal update from the Nolan as far as where they're at with their construction.
Thanks.
Okay, anything else? All right, thank you very much. This
Yeah.
meeting is now adjourned, and we are going to call to order the Clearwater City Council work session for July 17th. And our first item is Office of Management and Budget.
Adopt a tentative millage rate of 5.8850 mils for fiscal year 2023-2024. Set public hearing dates on the budget for September 6, 2023 and September 21, 2023. And schedule a special work session on August 7, 2023 at 1:30.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. So incredibly excited to be able to present this first budget. I absolutely want to thank the Finance Department and Budget Division for their assistance with this. They really did a lot of hand-holding for me and explained a lot. So I know that we have had several one-on-one conversations about what the budget was going to entail. We focused this budget on the priority list that we did through our strategic planning process. That and the message clearly that what Council's priorities were to maintain what we have versus continuing to add new. So the budget that is before you today is a balanced budget. Today, we are asking for the millage rate to be adopted. We, as the title states, we're going to have some specific budget meetings to where you can ask additional questions. Not that you can't ask questions today, but the goal of today is really about the millage rate. And then we have future meetings to go through all the stuff that's in the budget. But just in terms of some key points, it does have the same millage rate as we did last year. Staff is not recommending using a rollback rate. We do have an increase of 14.9 FTEs. A majority of those positions are in relation to the park coming on board and being activated now. We will have a staffing update at the August meeting, because I know what's on a lot of your minds is how we're doing in terms of all the vacancies. Yes, we do still have significant number of vacancies. I know that HR has deployed all kinds of different strategies to fill those with some great partnerships from the departments. So we have made progress, but yes, we do still have a really high vacancy rate. However, we do have, the park coming on board, and there's not a way to absorb that without adding some FTEs. And so the bigger projects that are in here, again, all focused on what was approved as the priority list. But we have the new City Hall and MSB. renovation. We are currently still going through the pay and classification study. That, our goal, remember, is to implement that in January. So whereas the budget does have some money budgeted for salary increases, we are not anticipating that that will be sufficient to cover. We don't know what this is going to look like. It's still too early. Once we have that information, we'll bring it back in front of the council. And then the other projects, the bigger ones that we have for this one is the marina renovation, of which we've had several conversations about, and then Osceola Street improvements and the downtown parking garage. So with that, I will turn it over to Kayleen unless you have any questions now.
Questions?
Okay.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council, Kayleen Castle, Budget Director. The fiscal year 23-24 proposed budget for all city operating funds, the special revenue funds, and capital improvement funds is $724,184,306. This reflects a 9% increase from the fiscal year 22-23 mid-year amended total city budget. This slide is a breakdown of that $724 million by fund type. The general fund budget for fiscal year 24 reflects an 8% increase from the current year's amended budget. The fiscal year 24 budget includes the new FTEs that are proposed, annual wage adjustments, operating expenses for Coachman Park operations. This is the first full year of that. Debt service costs for Imagine bonds and increased capital funding. The utility funds total, which includes the budget for water and sewer, stormwater, gas, and solid waste and recycling operations, reflects an 8% increase from the current year's amended budget. This increase is primarily due to funding for capital projects in both the water sewer fund and solid waste and recycling fund. The enterprise fund totals includes the budget for the operations of the beach marina, the air park, the Clearwater Harbor Marina, and parking is an 11% increase over the amended current year's budget. This increase is driven by capital transfers in the parking fund for the downtown parking garage. The internal service funds include the budget for information technology, utility customer service, building and maintenance, fleet and radio communications, and the central insurance fund. The budget for internal services reflects a 6% increase from the current year's amended budget due to increase in expenses for insurances in the central insurance fund, increased FTEs and salaries in general services, and increased software and maintenance contract costs in IT. Special revenue funds include the Special Development Fund. That's the fund that accounts for restricted revenue sources allocated to capital projects. The Special Program Fund, which is used to account for both revenues and expenditures related to grants and special activities, and other housing assistance funds. Special revenue funds reflect a 5% decrease in comparison to the current year's amended budget, and this is due to a decrease in planned penny funding for capital projects in the upcoming year. And the Capital Improvement Fund reflects an 18% increase from the fiscal year 23 budget. This chart represents the change in taxable property values over the last 11 years. Our 2023 preliminary values received from the Pinellas County Property Appraiser on July 1st reflect an increase in property values of approximately 11.04% from $15.2 billion in 2022 to $16.8 billion. The proposed millage rate of 5.8850 mills is recommended for the fiscal year 23-24 budget. This is the same rate as was levied in the current year. Due to growth in taxable values, this proposed rate is 10.27% greater than the rolled back rate. The rolled back rate is the millage rate that would provide the county with the same property tax revenues as was received in the prior year. Using this proposed millage rate, property tax revenues are projected to be $95.2 million in fiscal year 24. This represents an increase of approximately $10.2 million or 12% over the fiscal year 23's budget. Of the $95.2 million projected, approximately $90.7 million will support general fund operations, and $4.5 million represents the road millage used for maintenance of city streets. Revenues that support general fund operations reflect a net increase of 8% overall in comparison to the fiscal year 23 mid-year amended revenues. As discussed on the previous slide, ad valorem tax revenues are budgeted at $90.7 million, a 12% increase. The category of other taxes includes business tax receipts, which is budgeted less than the current year based on prior year actual revenues. And the all other revenue category is anticipated to increase by 36% in comparison to the current year. This category includes building permit fees, fines, interest earnings, and various small miscellaneous revenues. This increase is due to the interest earnings projected next year, an increase to interest earnings, and new revenues estimated for the ticket rebate from Ruth Eckerd Hall for concerts at the Sound. This chart also shows general fund revenues by category. Ad valorem taxes is our largest revenue source at 45% of total revenues. Intergovernmental revenues represent the next largest category at 15%, and the categories of utility taxes, franchise and other taxes, and charges for services revenues each are approximately 9% of total. Transfer revenues are 7%, and small revenues account for 6% of total. General fund expenditures in total reflect an increase of 8% across all operations in comparison to the current year. All departments' budgets are affected by annual wage adjustments and insurance increases. The budget for Parks and Recreation is increased by 14%. This is primarily due to including the budget for all personnel and operating costs associated with the operations of Coachman Park and the improved Cleveland streetscape. Also included is new funding for improvements to right-of-way landscaping. The 4% decrease to library services is due to the large capital transfer for main library renovations that was budgeted in the current year. Planning and development is increased by 13% in comparison to the current year, and this is primarily due to the addition of 3 new FTEs in that department. And the Public Works Department reflects a 24% increase, and this is due to funding transfer to the capital fund for major street improvements planned over the next few years. This pie chart also represents general fund expenditures by department. The budget for public safety is 47% of the total general fund budget, with the police department representing 29% and the fire department representing 18% of that total. The budget for Parks and Recreation is the second largest department with 22% of total general fund budget. This chart represents the total general fund budget by category. Personnel costs continue to be our largest expense at 61% of total. Operating expenditures represent the next largest category at 16.5% of total. Internal charges, this accounts for the costs associated with information technology, building and maintenance, fleet, risk management, and employee benefits. This represents 11% of the total general fund budget. Interfund transfers is 10%, and debt and capital expenditures combined represent 1.5% of the total general fund budget. Debt costs include payments on Imagine Clearwater bonds and the financing for vehicles and equipment which support general fund operations. Capital expenditures, a part of that, 1.5%, include the library's book budget and the purchases of small machinery and equipment that reach a capital threshold. A total of 1,891.9 full-time equivalent positions are proposed across all funds for fiscal year 24. This is a net increase of 14.9 from the current fiscal year 23 amended budget. In this graph, the sand-colored portion represents general fund FTEs, which are budgeted at 1,167.8 positions for fiscal year 24. This is an increase of 14.9 from the current year's amended budget. In comparison, the green portion represents all other funds. This is a total of 724.1 FTEs for fiscal year 24. That's the same as the current year. The next two slides detail FTE changes in this proposed budget by strategic priority. To support initiatives that prioritize high-performing government, a total of 17.4 positions are being added. For the general fund, this includes 3 fire medics to better support shift coverage. In Parks and Recreation, we're increasing a part-time staff assistant to full-time. In planning and development, we've included a business systems analyst, a senior long-range planner, and a floodplain administrator, and all of these positions are in support of the business process study. For the police department, the proposed budget includes 7 additional officers to provide dedicated staffing for the downtown corridor. In the Beach Marina and Clearwater Harbor Marina funds, an additional marine facility operator is being shared. And in the general services fund, an administrative support manager, licensed electrician, and plumber are all being added. To support initiatives that prioritize economic and housing opportunity, a housing specialist is added to the housing division. And to support initiatives that prioritize community well-being, a CRA manager and CRA specialist are being added to support both CRAs. And in public communications, an additional public information coordinator is included in the proposed budget. These new requests total 21.4 FTEs, 17.4 in the general fund, and 4 positions to support other operating funds. Similar to last year, we focused on opportunities to repurpose existing positions to offset our current needs. Due to long-term vacancies, a total of 6.5 FTEs are being eliminated. We are also reclassing a total of 2 parking security positions from Marine and Aviation funds to the general fund. These positions are now budgeted in the police department and will work in coordination with the downtown marina staff to provide security patrol at Cushman Park. This reduction and reclass of position results in a net increase of 14.9 FTEs proposed for fiscal year '24. This slide represents the categorical breakdown of the capital improvement budget for fiscal year '24. Funding funding of projects for utilities, so stormwater, water and sewer, gas, and solid waste and recycling are budgeted at $73.6 million next year. This continues to be our largest expense at approximately 48% of the total capital improvement budget. Significant changes to utility projects include funding for utility replacement as part of the Fort Harrison and Osceola roadway projects, and increases to existing utility infrastructure projects which are in line with the master plan. General government projects are estimated at $37.6 million, which represents 24% of total capital funding. This includes projects for police, fire, streets, sidewalks, parks and recreation facilities, libraries, and the maintenance of city buildings and facilities that operate general government functions. Significant changes proposed to general government projects include additional funding of $1.8 million of general fund and multimodal revenues in the Fort Harrison Road Construction Project, and an additional $1.1 million of general fund revenues for the Public Works Project. New projects include $222,020 from general fund revenues for the Osceola Streetscape Project, $806,000 from the general fund to establish the amphitheater R&R project, $200,000 from the general fund to establish a playground pour program, and $100,000 for the new Moccasin Lake Stormwater Improvement Project. Projects in support of internal service operations are budgeted at $12.3 million, or 8% of total capital funding. These projects support fleet, radio communications, general services, information technology, and utility customer service. And the capital budget for small enterprise funds is proposed at $29.9 million for fiscal year '24, and this is to provide funding for capital repair and maintenance of the air park, both marinas and parking facilities. Council, earlier this year, you adopted our new strategic plan with these 5 strategic priorities that are listed on this slide. We've updated the capital improvement plan to align each project category with the strategic plan. This visual represents the funding of project as they align to the eligible priority areas. Of our 18 project categories, all achieve the priority area of high-performing government. In addition, 8 categories include projects that strengthen environmental stewardship efforts, and 3 categories support community well-being. As previously mentioned, additional FTEs were also aligned with the strategic plan. This visual represents the net addition of FTEs proposed for fiscal year '24. We have scheduled a special work session as an opportunity for you to further discuss the proposed budget with all departments represented. This is planned to be held on Monday, August 7th at 1:30 p.m. If there are specific topics you would like discussed, please let the city manager know as soon as possible so we can prepare any documents or presentations for your topic. The action requested of you on Thursday is to set the tentative millage rate, which the city manager has proposed at 5.885 mils, and to set the 2 public hearing dates for September. This information is provided to the county for inclusion in trim notices, which are mailed to our residents in August. So just to note, on Thursday, if you set the tentative millage rate at the proposed 5.885 mils, it can be reduced in September, but this rate cannot go higher without a first-class mailing to each resident at the city's cost. Our first public hearing will be will be a special council meeting scheduled Wednesday, September 6th, and the second hearing for final adoption is planned as part of the regular council meeting on Thursday, September 21st, and both of these meetings are scheduled to begin at 6 p.m. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Any questions or comments at this point in time? Anyone? Okay, thank you very much. Economic Development and Housing.
Review US 19 website marketing analytics.
Good afternoon, Audra Aha, Economic Development and Housing Marketing and Communications Coordinator. In February, we launched a marketing campaign to drive awareness about the development opportunities along the US 19 corridor. So I'm here today, along with our entire economic development team, to provide an update about our marketing campaign activities since we've launched. Since Mayor Ongst was not with us when we first brought this to council earlier in the year, I'd like to provide a brief history as to how we got to where we are today. In 2017, the city rezoned nearly 4,000 parcels along the US 19 corridor, and with that rezoning came an enhanced US 19 zoning district development standard, which over time will allow us to have a more urban form of development. So we felt that now was the perfect time to launch a marketing campaign to drive awareness to these opportunities. Our marketing strategies focus on 4 key areas: to attract private investment, to redevelop obsolete inventory, to brand our corridor as a destination for business relocation and expansion, and to attract those target industries that the city is best suited to support. We worked with the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council to commission renderings of 4 key sites along the corridor that we believe represent the substantial development potential of US 19. We also worked with them to produce an animated 3D video which gives a fly-through along US 19, and the viewer watches these 4 sites transform from their current state to what we believe their full development potential to be. And I did want to mention that the 4 sites that are selected are really for illustrative purposes only, to help the viewer reimagine the possibilities, and they do not represent any proposed project under consideration or approval by property owners. We developed a landing page to house the video and the renderings, as well as key pieces of information about US 19. And we're using a variety of marketing channels in order to communicate this message, as we're using digital advertising on well-respected national industry websites that are frequented by our target audiences of commercial brokers and developers and site selectors. We are sponsoring content in both regional and national industry publications. We're sharing the video through social media and through event sponsorships. We are leveraging influencer relationships to have them share our information as well with their following. And we are continuing in direct engagement with our target audiences. This photo here is of the February Crew Tampa Bay Luncheon, where we were able to show this video to over 300 commercial brokers and developers and site selectors. We did this the week that we launched, and it was a great kickoff to our campaign. We have a robust digital advertising campaign where we're serving digital banner ads, as well as placing our video on these national websites that are followed by our target audiences. And these are 2 examples of advertisements that we worked with our public communications team to design. We've earned media coverage through numerous regional and national publications, and these are 2 examples of coverage we've earned. The first is with Site Selection magazine, and they did a full-length interview with our director, Denise Sanderson, for their Investor Watch segment. And the other is an example of an on-camera interview that she did with ABC Action News. So our marketing results so far, we've earned 3 on-camera interviews with local affiliates of Fox, ABC, and CBS. We've had placement in over 16 local and national news articles. We've placed a full-page ad in Site Selection magazine, which was mailed to 40,000 subscribers and placed on their website. We've served more than 540,000 digital advertising impressions of our marketing materials. We've had thousands of views of our video, with that viewership increasing every week since we've launched the campaign. We've had significant visitation to our landing page, as well as seen an increase in our social media engagement. For all of this, we've spent less than $60,000 on this marketing campaign, which was offset by a very generous marketing grant that we received from Duke Energy for $25,000, resulting in a general fund impact of a little over $34,000. In May, we received an Innovation in Marketing Award from the Florida Economic Development Council, and the photo you see here is of Dylan, Stephanie, and I at the annual conference accepting this beautiful award on behalf of the city. We've held meetings with over 25 qualified developers ranging from regional to national to international firms with the capacity to support multi-billion-dollar projects. And we've also had meetings with more than 35 industry influencers who have provided referrals for us and introductions after they watched our video. So what are our next steps? We're going to continue these ongoing engagements with our target audiences. We also will be continuing our digital advertising efforts. For example, beginning in June and running through November, we are the featured video on Expansion Solution Magazine's homepage. We also are the lead digital banner ads this month on both Urban Land Institute and Site Selection Magazine's homepages. And we are currently running a targeted video campaign on LinkedIn. We're going to be looking for conferences and trade shows where we can get in front of our target audiences. And to build upon the momentum of this US 19 campaign, in October, we will be launching the Property Redevelopment Opportunity Partnership Program. Now, this is a program that's designed to establish an inventory of sites throughout all of Clearwater with the capacity to support our target industry, office, and industrial growth, as well as our property redevelopment. And I'm thrilled to share that for the second year in a row, we have received a $25,000 grant from Duke Energy to support our marketing efforts of this program. And in the upcoming fiscal year, we also intend to conduct a familiarization tour with commercial brokers and developers to highlight those identified sites throughout the city. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions or take any comments.
Okay. Questions?
I'm really impressed with your marketing efforts. They're so extensive and diverse. So kudos to your department. So my question is, in things like, let's say, for example, the monthly lunch, the launch, and I think it was in February, what has been the feedback and response from the developers and all your efforts that you've put forth? What has been the response feedback?
We've had an amazing response. We've received phone calls from developers, from brokers who are interested in learning more, and not just about those 4 properties, but about the other properties that are available for redevelopment. People that own properties that are coming out and saying, I might be interested in having some conversations about, having my properties redeveloped. So we've had a really great response.
Has there been any bites? Anything concrete?
And I don't know if Phil or Denise want to speak to that.
I would say it's too early. These processes unfortunately take very, very long. I would suggest that we have heard that some things are being bid and early stage of negotiation. On concepts only. So I think we have a ways to go before we're ready to announce anything, before we even could announce anything, but really positive momentum, and we hope to see it.
Does that include new industries, perhaps?
At this point, what I'm hearing is really on redevelopment of site for the spec marketplace. I think there might be some other things in the works, but nobody has come forward with any specifics, so I can't say.
But it definitely has helped generate that top-of-mind awareness and that excitement that we have a lot going on, so it's been really positive.
Other questions? Yes.
Thank you, Audra. It is exciting to see what's happening, and it's only been a short amount of time. When we do advertising with, Site Selection Magazine or others, I'm sure we get analytics on clicks and things like that.
We do, yes.
Okay, so
yes.
You're happy with the number of clicks and what they're doing?
Yes.
Allowing it time to work and grow?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We're getting a really good, they're delivering impressions. We're getting clicks through to our landing page. So I'm very pleased with the results that we're receiving so far.
Good. Do you think you should modify your approach in any way based on what you're seeing at this early stage?
I think just having a variety of different marketing concepts that we're delivering is just having that repeated engagement and that repeated top-of-mind awareness rather than, running one ad. We need to redesign it to pique people's interests and to try different platforms. So we're researching different places that we can serve these with the audiences that we need to be in front of. So I think just with continual engagement that, we're going to continue to see the positive response that we're receiving.
Great. You've got that, we're launching the property redevelopment inventory program, so that seems fantastic. And hopefully it'll dovetail with our property inventory of downtown Clearwater, or both CRAs. But can you give me any kind of who's responsible for that? Is it going to be economic development and housing? And do you have enough staff to do it? And what's the timeline for a deliverable?
So we're going to be launching it in the new fiscal year, starting a marketing campaign, and we foresee it going through the full fiscal year. So it will be run by our economic development team. We have, our senior economic development coordinator. We have Dylan Mayu, who oversees our real estate services. So really, it's a team effort. We all will be working together on this program to launch it and continually get it in front of people. And we can provide more details as it gets closer to the launch on the program specifics.
So if it's a marketing campaign, so this isn't all just done by tax rolls, right? Can't we just look at tax rolls and what a particular property is listed as? Is it used for retail or industry or whatever? What are we marketing to for that kind of research or data?
So we're getting the message out that we're looking for properties that are interested in maybe getting added to. We have a website, and it's on our economic development landing page. And so on there, we highlight different properties throughout Clearwater that are available for purchase or for lease. So we can add those, for example, we can add those properties to our website. And then through if we have a property owner that's interested in working with us, we can, in our marketing efforts, highlight those properties if they meet certain criteria that we establish that have a significant development potential, and we can assist in the marketing of those properties as well as opportunities.
Okay, so the detail goes into, is this property one that someone is open to having redeveloped or sold? It's not just vacant property that sits there.
Correct.
Whether it's Hercules or downtown or whatever.
Correct.
So we don't have an inventory of all of our underutilized or vacant properties throughout the city, because we're only going to list those that some owner has said, I'm interested in doing something with my property.
Correct. We're looking to partner with people to help get the word out about these properties. So these 4 that were selected for US 19, we just wanted to provide illustrations and really help people reimagine what's possible. For the addition for this program, we would like to partner with property owners in order to, and their brokers, of course.
If I may interrupt, Denise Anderson, Economic Development and Housing. On our real estate tool, it's an automatic feed from the MLS. So if a property is listed, it's coming into our website. So it doesn't actually come in from the MLS. It comes in from the broker's websites captured by bots. So it comes in and it's shown there as available site. So if it's listed, it in theory should be on there. And it's the redevelopment program that Audra is referring to. That's targeting specific properties that meet criteria for redevelopment. And those will be featured sort of top of page, if you will, for this program.
We could pin them.
Okay, so you get a list that comes in from the brokers. We got this list of, let's say it's 300, and we look at that list, and we're saying, boy, that one looks attractive for possible redevelopment or development. And then you reach out. Well, we're not going to reach out to that owner because we already know if they're listed on this, broker's website. We know that they're interested.
We will be reaching out to those property owners and the representing brokers to make sure that they're aligned with us in terms of the types of usage they wish to see, the redevelopment they wish to see on that site.
To make sure that they're aligned with us? But they can do what they want, right?
They absolutely can. If they want our support getting certain kinds of development there, we want to ensure that they're interested in that type of development.
Okay. Okay.
Other questions or comments?
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for the presentation. When I had my meeting or the big crew get-together, that's one thing we hammered home with the help of Mr. Delk, that we had 7,000 parcels over 7 miles on US 19, and
4,000 parcels.
4,000, excuse me. Well, 7,000 sounds better, but
It's a lot of parcels.
no, I think I said 4,000 that day. Anyway, it was,
Could I make
Yes.
a short comment, Mayor?
yes,
I
absolutely.
think, this has the opportunity to be probably as substantial of economic development for us as the redevelopment of the beach. And, I remember back when we designed and adopted the Hotel Density Reserve, we were just going into the Great Recession. There was a few years there, nothing happened, and then the lightning struck, and we're going on a decade plus now with new hotels still being permitted. So I think, the challenge for us is to manage our expectations. Remember that when all else fails, lowering your standards is not a good economic development strategy, that we continue to maintain an aggressive approach to market the incredible opportunity, as you said, 7 miles, 4,000 properties, and really kind of sell ourselves, in my mind, I see it as kind of the West Shore of Pinellas County. And frankly, there's probably some days we're about as close to the airport as some people who live in West Shore are. And you also looked at in the next year or so, the city of Clearwater through Bayside Bridge and US 19 is going to be connected to the regional interstate system. We are going to be, from a vehicular traffic standpoint, much more connected to the region. I think US 19 and the marketing and everything the staff is doing is positioning us really to for people who may look at West Shore, not find exactly what they want, or maybe the prices per square foot a little too high, we may be an outstanding alternative to that down the line. And when we do break through that market ceiling, if you will, I think we've got years of opportunity along US 19. We'll find at the next census tract probably that the city's population has grown primarily because of the massive number of development that's occurring in the US 19. So that's going to drive us to a higher population. I think economic development opportunities are soon to follow. So I'm optimistic about that.
Yeah, and how many units are going in on those? There's a lot of apartments going in between Sunset Point and
We've
Enterprise,
had
high-end.
probably 2,000 or 3,000.
Just don't worry about it. Just approximately, yeah.
We can find out, but a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot. And then, like you said, ingress and egress is what it's all about. And we'll have it. So great job. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
All right. Oh, yes, sir. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so, it's nice to see all the apartments out there, but that's not really what we want to see all up and down 19. It's nice to have that there, but, it was designed to have, activity centers up and down. So that's real important as you're talking to property owners and people about other things that can be put there besides, apartments. Thanks.
Mixed use. Balance, right? Okay, thank you. All right, 3.2, please.
Approve the City of Clearwater's fiscal year 2023-2024 annual action plan.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. This is Denise Anderson, Economic Development and Housing. I'll try to be brief. This is a public hearing on Thursday, so I'll dive into some of these things, and if you have any questions, most assuredly I'll do my best to answer them. But as stated in the agenda, the 2023-24 annual action plan is the fourth annual action plan of the 5-year consolidated plan. The creation of the consolidated plan and annual action plans are required by HUD annually. The annual action plan, annual document required annually, of all jurisdictions receiving one or more of 5 different federal allocations. We received 2, CDW-G and Home. And while the 5-year consolidated plan, or CON plan, as we often refer to it, serves as a framework for identifying housing and community development priorities that align with our funding sources, the annual action plan provides a summary of activities for the use of federal and non-federal sources of funds, i.e. SHIP, our state source, and these will be used to address priority needs and goals identified in that CON plan of 2020. So the Annual Action Plan, or AAP, is a lengthy document, 68 pages plus 20 or more pages of attachments. I'm sure you all read it cover to cover, but rather than review the entire document with you, I'll just hit on some important points. So the process of the creation of this document really begins with identifying anticipated sources and uses of funds. For sources, we look at anticipated receipt of program income, that is generally the repayment of loans. We look at carryover funds from previous years, and I should note that some of these funds may already be encumbered, but until they've been dispersed, they show up in this document. We look at expected entitlement funding, of course. This year, for 23-24, we expect our CDW-G entitlement to be $913,337. Home funds is $532,649, and SHIP is expected to be $1,365,854. With all of these sources of funds, the estimate is just over $11 million that we anticipate having available. So part of the process of determining the use of funds begins in January when we call for applications from our nonprofit organizations. Applicants have 30 days to submit for public services, public facilities, microenterprise, et cetera, and we then follow this review process, score, rank, it goes before the Neighborhood and Affordable Housing Advisory Board, and in May they made a recommendation for the funding of CDW-G funds. That grant process is for primarily the CDW-G funds. This year we received 22 qualifying applications, 8 for public services, 8 for public facilities, 2 for homebuyer education, and 2 for processing of purchase assistance loans, and 2 for microenterprise activities. For other uses, we look at trends in pipeline projects. So the funding allocations, I'll summarize them. $1.1 million approximately on public facility projects. These are the 8 projects I mentioned that we received applications, plus some TBDs so that we can handle public facility projects throughout the year that may come in. $136,998 for public services projects, and that number is very low because HUD sets a cap on our entitlement to just 15% for this kind of use. We have, again, 8 projects there. Administration is funded at $405,016, and that's used for salary benefits and operating expenses of our housing division staff. $388,352 is allocated to economic development activities. The ED activities for this line item is limited to businesses or business support organizations that serve a low-mod income clientele or are located in a low-mod income area. So not to be confused with the other types of economic development stuff we were just talking about. Our housing activities are funded at $8.7 million, or 79% of total funds available. These activities include creation and preservation of rental housing or owner-occupied housing, our down payment assistance program, tenant-based rental assistance, and a required set-aside for Community Housing Development Organization, or CHODO, for the production of low-income housing. And separate but related is homebuyer or homeowner education counseling at $50,000. You'll also see in our budget some set-asides for property acquisition and demolition. Basically, if we don't have a category in there, then we can't fund it at some point. So we like to have each category allocated or at least identified in the plan so that we can fund it if needed. Another example of that is disaster. You'll find that in the annual action plan. We use this, unfortunately, during COVID. We could use it if we were hit by a hurricane, et cetera, or other forms of disaster. There is no dollar allocated to that. But if needed, we could put money in there without having to go through an amendment process, potentially. So the Neighborhood and Affordable Housing Advisory Board met on July 11th and unanimously recommended council approval. And presuming that you do the same on Thursday, we'll incorporate minutes from the meetings, any public comments received into the attachments, and submit this to HUD by our deadline of August 15th. And the plan goes into effect on 10/1. Happy to take any questions.
Questions or comments? Anyone? Yes.
Thank you, Denise. There's never enough money, right? If we look at the third attachment on public facilities and infrastructure improvements, I noticed that we have 2 lines to be determined, public facilities projects to be determined, public infrastructure with over 500, almost $600,000 with those 2 things. Are the projects that are listed above that from the R Cope Villages, PEM, St. Vincent, R Club, all that stuff, did everybody get fully funded at what they asked for?
They did. I'm sorry, I don't know if you were done that question.
Yep.
They did get fully funded, and actually this is something that we've talked about, that it's a process that I intend to change next year. And the reason for that, we currently limit it at $90,000 a maximum request so that we can fund all projects. You'll see some at $95,000 because we have $5,000 in hard costs that are considered project delivery costs, inspections and the like. So I think in future years we'll put that at $180,000. So, and then we'll go through a competitive cycle, much like we do on our public services process that I know you're familiar with. And the reason I'm suggesting the change is when we get a new application for public facilities, it's about a 3-month process before we can issue a notice to proceed because of all of the other requirements that we have to go through before we can say you can pull a permit and we can pay you. So I'd rather get all of those asks at this time of the year, so in October, they're ready to go, and we can spend those dollars and not be putting fires out every single day on those kinds of projects.
So you're going to increase the ask amount?
We are, and then some may not get fully funded in future years, but at least we'll be able to look at an entirety of projects. So as it relates to the ones that you see here, those 8 projects, we're going, upon approval, following approval and submittal to HUD, we'll go back to those 8 recipients and say, is there anything more within this project that you did not request that is under a $180,000 cap? We'll look at funding that.
So that'll happen after October?
After August 15th,
Okay, okay.
after we submit it to HUD. I don't want to mess with an existing document.
Okay, that's good to know. So that'll make them happy, right?
Presumably, yes, although you'll notice that one of those applicants submitted a $17,000 request. I presume that that's the entirety of their project, so not all of them will see an increase, I'm sure, but we'll give them the opportunity to make that request.
Okay. And then the programs like rental assistance, down payment, things like that, are those all depleted? Or should we be putting more money into those types of things?
Referring to tenant-based rental assistance? Not sure. The tenant-based rental assistance project that you see there is through Clearwater Housing Authority. And so those are for their home choice voucher, housing choice voucher recipients, so it's really a captured audience. We do have housing navigation services, as you know, through Homeless Leadership Alliance, and that's sort of a different process, albeit funded from these same sources.
Okay. And then I had a couple of questions on the second page. Can any of the funds in all of these accounts, so home, CDW-G, all that stuff, be used for community development, like for a, all right, to purchase property for, where you have housing, I don't know why it's lost me. It's, but
Acquisition of properties?
it's for the property where people own the house, but it has to remain affordable, and then when you sell it, what is that called? The,
Land use restricted.
no, it's,
Sorry.
no, that's okay. It's always up at the Affordable Housing Conference. They talk about a community land trust, to purchase property for that.
Yeah, so as you know, we have the county's land trust, but Community Trust also has a land trust. We do not have a community land trust here. I'm not sure that it's under anything that we've explored, but we often do, we see projects come forward quite often where we're a party to a project. So most recently, as an example, 1454 South MLK. Actually, that's probably not a great one. 306 South Washington was one, and I believe the Clearwater Gardens is another at 1250 Cleveland Street, where that property is going to be acquired by the Land Trust of Pinellas County, and that makes it affordable for 99 years.
Have we ever thought about partnering with nonprofits for that, for a community land trust, with some of these funds?
You know, I don't know if we've ever thought about it. I know that's not anything that's captured my attention in the last year. Doesn't mean that we couldn't be exploring that. We used to utilize Bright Community Trust quite often. They would acquire a property, put it in the land trust. It usually had a house sitting on it, and they would rehab the house and sell it to a qualifying buyer. They've had a lot of changes within that organization in the last couple of years, and I've not seen any activity out of there. Additionally, the cost of real estate has been really prohibitive for a lot of these organizations to acquire rehab and find a qualifying buyer for sale. It's a confluence of market interest rates, insurance, and materials and labor, and all of those other things that everybody probably in this room is experiencing.
When I look at the remaining balance carryover into fiscal year 24-25 of $11 million, I just wonder, what could we be doing with that?
As I said at the top part of my discussion, some of these dollars, in fact, are encumbered, but until a shovel is coming out of the ground, we can't disperse.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit misleading here, unfortunately, but as a Fed, feds don't really care about what's encumbered, they care about what's spent. So, and this is a federal document.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes.
So I was pleased to see not only all the citizen participation outreach efforts, but how well you detailed them, so it's easy reference for me when anyone says, well, I didn't know about that. What did you, how do we know? And then I'm like, I can say, well, there's 12 ways that we did some outreach, so thank you so much for not only doing it, but so effectively documenting it too. Very easy reference for me.
Great, thank you.
Anything else? No? Okay, thank you very much.
And you'll enjoy this experience again on Thursday. Thank you.
Gas, number 4.
Accept the utility easement from the CDW-G Fund for the construction, installation, maintenance of gas utility facilities on real property located at 2358, 2308, 2284, 2290, 2294, 2298, 2302, 2310, 2316, 2320, 2324, 2328, and 2332 on Dunn Highway.
Good afternoon, Council. My name is Alex Leon. I'm an Interim Assistant Director for the Gas Department. And this item is looking for your acceptance of a gas easement for us to install and maintain our infrastructure. The extension of this line will allow us to serve 3 commercial customers.
Any questions or comments on this item? Consent? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item number 5, 5.1, Parks and Rec.
Approve a purchase order to Bliss Products for the purchase of amenities for park locations.
Good afternoon, Mayor, council members. Art Cater, Director of Parks and Recreation. This contract is for the replacement of park amenities that we have in all of our parks, including park benches, receptacles, trash receptacles, picnic tables. Last year, we began a new program of replacing the metal and the wooden benches with concrete and recycled type furniture. We found that this very attractive material, it's easy to maintain, and most importantly, it's sustainable and gives us a life cycle of about 20 years for this equipment. Also included in this order, you saw one basketball tree. A basketball tree is 5 baskets. It's at different heights, and it allows for people of all abilities, all ages, to be able to use them. And we're going to try it at Crest Lake Park. It'll be the first one we have, and we think it's going to be very successful. We'll put it in some of our other parks. I'm available to answer any questions you might have.
Questions or comments? Yes.
I just had a question. Is there a list of where these pieces are going and an expected timeline of their arrival and installation?
Well, again, it's like anything else we're waiting about. It'd probably be 3 months before we can get them.
Really? Okay.
Anything else?
Yeah, I'd just like to thank you for putting in a picture of the basketball tree, because I could not imagine what that was.
Yeah, most people don't. I didn't at first, so.
They didn't have that when you grew up?
I didn't have one of those, no.
Neither did I.
I was a little kid trying to hit
Neither did I.
that 10 foot up there, it looked like, 100 feet.
Any other questions? Consent?
Yep.
Thank you. 5.2, please.
Approve agreement with terms with Bounce Life Amusements.
Yes, this Art Cater, Director of Park, do I say that every time? Art Cater, Director of Parks and Recreation. I figured it out, okay. It's for the record, all right. During our summer and our holiday day camps, as well as special events, we lease inflatables that are used as part of the program. Obviously, these inflatables are very popular with the children, and the camp people and the camp counselors are the ones that actually take care of them and take care of the children when they use them. This item would not normally come before you. However, it's a purchasing item, and it's really about $50,000. However, we're bringing it before you because there is a hold harmless clause in there whereby the agency did not want to take on the liability for that. Basically, what they do is they deliver these. We blow them up. Our staff monitors them, monitors the people, the kids that go in. And for your record, the city owns several of these that we have used at other events. We've not had any problems in the last 10 years. So with that, I'm available to answer any questions.
Any questions, comments? Consent?
Yes.
Thank you. 5.3, please.
Authorize a guaranteed maximum price proposal to Khors Construction for the construction replacement of a wooden deck around Pier 60 concession stand.
Due to the harsh environment and the heavy use that we have on Clearwater Beach, the wooden deck that surrounds Pier 60 concession and restroom area It's splintery, it's old, it's worn out, and we've been replacing boards, trying to flip them over, but it's at time now that it needs to be replaced. This proposal is for all the work that's needed to remove all of the wood structure that's there, and we are going to we propose to replace it with a concrete deck and include new aluminum railing, ADA ramps, and stair railing. Staff is proposing this construction basically to reduce the maintenance requirements that we have out there, and it'll give us a more longevity for this deck structure. We're requesting approval now because this is a lead time for the aluminum railing of 4 months. So that's why we're asking for it now. The project itself will only take 60 days, hope to be done by spring. Available to answer any of your questions.
Any questions or comments? Yes.
The only thing I had to comment on or ask about this one is when you are making the new ramp, obviously ADA compliant, I would hope that we look at that report that we paid for, the $90 million in findings of ADA compliance throughout our city, which the number's gone down, but still, to look at that report as we get architectural renderings of what that ramp's going to be, so we can check off all of those findings related to that
Absolutely.
structure.
We will do that.
That'd be good. Okay.
Anything else on this one? Consent?
No.
Thank you. 5.4, please.
Approve a strategic consulting services contract with CAA Icon in connection with consulting services with negotiations with the Philadelphia Phillies.
Right. On May the 15th of this year, the City Council approved a review committee, the ranking of several firms that had applied for this. This is for the professional services proposal, RFP 3123. The top-ranked firm was CAA Icon. The services provided by them will be the negotiation strategy development, the deal structure, the lease analysis, negotiation advisory and support, and the document execution support. We are hopeful that the negotiations would take only 3 months. We really do hope, when everybody's ready to sit down at the table, we hope to be able to get through that. And basically, we're looking at 3 months at $35,000 a month. If, however, the negotiations go longer than that, we have put in this agenda item for an additional 3 months if needed. I'm available to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions or comments?
Go council first. I have a comment
Okay.
whenever it's appropriate, please.
I just had on page 3, Art, it says when we talk about negotiation advisory and support, the deal structure advisory, advise on comparability with other spring training venues. So I looked up the Grapefruit League and where all the venues are. Most of them are along, the coast of Florida, although I would venture that no one has our beautiful beach. Dunedin's real close, but they don't have the beach. And so, what I would ask CAA Icon is to really, when they show us comparables, it's as close as possible to all the wonderful things that Clearwater offers here,
Yes, absolutely.
and our award-winning beach and all that.
Absolutely. They will take that into account, I'm sure.
Anything else?
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to make sure, we've had a couple conversations as it relates to hiring on this consultant. And so what we are agreeing to is that they will be the point person that will handle the negotiations. So just like in other negotiations, when you are in negotiations and you have a point person, that is the point person that handles all the communications between the two. And so we want this structured that same way. This is a significant task for us and a very important one to the city. And so in our best efforts to make sure that this gets done timely, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page that it would be the consultant that is going to exclusively handle the negotiations. And that's why we're approving this contract.
Yes, fair enough.
And then the second thing, I know that we have had a lot of conversations surrounding the Phillies trip because that is scheduled for August. And I think after having communications and discussing this with the city attorney, what the recommendation would be is if the council wants to do this, that a council member go, and then the city manager can go as well to bring back any information. The reason we're making the recommendation in terms of it being a council member is to just avoid any kind of perceptions as it relates to sunshine violation or anything along those lines. So just wanted to make sure, we had that everybody understands that trip has been planned. I know this is a long-standing tradition in terms of, the relationship between the Phillies and the city, and that would be our plan moving forward
Okay.
for this year.
Okay, everyone in agreement with that?
Yeah, I think it's important that Jennifer goes and you go.
Well, they can go, right, they go, but there's no talk of the negotiations at all, because we'll be in the middle of negotiations.
No, of course not. It's a relationship continuing. It's not negotiation. Okay? All right, anything else? All right, thank you. Consent on this one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, 5.4. 5.5, excuse me.
Yeah.
Approve a restrictive covenant between the city and the state of Florida Division of Arts and Culture to allow Ruth Eckerd Hall to receive cultural facilities grants.
Yes, Ruth Eckerd Hall applied for and received a $500,000 grant. It's a cultural and arts grant. The city, as the owner of the land and the buildings, is required to enter into a 10-year restrictive covenant with the state of Florida to ensure that the facility will be used as a cultural facilities. It should be pointed out that the city agreement with Ruth Eckerd Hall now basically extends for about 8 years, or July 1st, 2031. But to operate or to meet this restrictive covenant, we need 2 additional years to July 17th, 2033. It is our feeling, or staff's feeling, that even if Ruth Eckerd Hall agreement was not renewed, which would have to come up, the city would still operate the facility in the same manner that it's being operated now. So staff feels very comfortable recommending to you to sign the restrictive covenant.
Any questions or comments on this item? Consent?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's take a brief recess.
Thank you.
Welcome back to the July 17th Clearwater City Council work session, and we'll resume with item number 6, the Police Department.
Good afternoon, everyone. Michael Wallach, Interim Chief of Police. In 2021, the Police Department established a co-responder program model to respond to in-progress calls and conduct follow-up on calls involving persons suffering from mental illness. 2 co-responder teams were created, each including a CPD officer and a crisis response specialist provided by the current memorandum of agreement with the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office. The cost of the 2 crisis response specialists at the start of the program was $143,200. Nowadays, it is $147,700. The department is billed quarterly for the work performed in the previous quarter. The department was previously awarded $144,000 from the Bureau of Justice Assistance to reimburse 1 year of the program. This additional award of $40,122 is now being requested to help reimburse funding for the co-responder model beyond this year. I can ask any questions.
Any questions or comments on this item? Consent?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Public Works, item number 7.
Approve the distribution easement request by Duke Energy to operate and maintain its facilities in support of City Hall Bluff project.
Good afternoon, Mayor, council members. Robert Casmer, Public Works, Real Estate Coordinator. For your consent review today is a Duke Energy distribution easement in support of the City Hall Bluff development. In brief, we have received this easement reconfirms the mutually approved Duke Energy existing facilities based on as-built plans and recent surveys and sketch. Any disturbed utilities during installation have been returned to the original condition. City staff have reviewed and approved this request. Any questions, please?
Questions or comments? Consent?
Yeah.
Thank you. 7.2, please.
Approve 4-year professional services agreement with 47 firms selected for engineer of record.
Good afternoon, Ellie Schoberg, the Engineering Deputy Director. Our current engineer of record contract is set to expire at the end of this month. The city issued a request for qualifications in February, on February 28th, to solicit responses for our next 4-year engineer of record contract. The selection committee consists of multiple departments within the city, and we reviewed 55 responses. The committee recommends retaining 29 of the existing firms and adding 18 additional firms.
Any questions or comments on this item? Yes.
Hi, so I have a number of questions about this. So I understand the reason to have a list of engineers of record. I assume that they're all vetted, right, and there's an approval process. But once we have this list, which is going to be now like 56 some, or
47, I believe.
What?
47.
47 for multiple departments. And so we just trust that they're going to give us a great price, right, when we contract with them? Because what we've done is, when we have engineers of risk, engineers of record here, and they give us a price for a project, we don't have them bid against each other. In fact, they don't bid against anyone.
No, in CCNA, you're not supposed to do that.
Right. And so how do we know, how are we ensured that we are really getting a great price? And when they come back to us for, I need a budget increase, it's like, almost like no questions asked.
I don't think it's no questions asked, and a lot of it depends on the qualifications of the staff that are running the project. 10% is a good rule of thumb to start with. That's typically what you expect the design fees to be on a construction project. And due to the level of complications on a project, some rise above, some go beneath. But 10% is a good starting point that you look at.
Okay. Can you get me, or do you provide a running total of how often we've used each firm? Like, are we playing favorites? Do we kind of just go with who we know? Is it based on relationships? That kind of a thing. And how do we document offering a project? Do we offer the project to each engineer who can do that type of work, or do we choose one and say, we'd like you to do this project?
Based on information we have and experience in the industry, we usually pick a firm that's good at the job that we're trying to get done. We start off with one firm and solicit them, ask them for a scope, and we go over that. From the RFQs and experience and calling other municipalities, we pick firms. For example, Atkins is doing the Fort Harrison. They did Magnolia and Jeffords for us 7, 8, 9 years ago, and they did a great job on the grading and the flow lines to make sure that the finished product was a quality product. And they were reasonable. They didn't have any change orders on us. They didn't come back for any additional monies, and they gave us a good product for the price that we asked for. So for a roadway project, I feel pretty confident in using that firm.
So no change orders, comes in on time, price we asked for, all those kinds of things. Are those articulated, like when you choose a firm XYZ, do you have a box or some kind of, that why you chose that firm? That they have this, on-time rate, they, don't ask for budget increases and things like that?
Well, no, and there's two different ways to do these contracts. One is a lump sum, and one is the time and materials. Lump sum I refer to as kind of like buying a car. I walk in the car lot, I tell them I want a 2022 1500 pickup truck, and I'm willing to pay $23,000, and I get the truck and I walk out the door. As long as you keep everything within scope of that project, the fee is the same. They're going to eat a little bit on some aspects of it, and they're going to make a little bit on some aspects of it. When you go time and materials, it's based on the hours they spend on the job. So, those typically, it's the chicken or the egg, which way you want to go. Both of them can cost you extra money, but theoretically, if you do a lump sum and you stay within scope and don't add anything or change anything from the initial part, the fee is the same when you're done. Time and materials, if things get complicated, they can come back and ask you for more money, and they have the right to do that because they've spent more time. So it kind of depends on which way, and we do both ways, depends on the project.
I think for me, being as frugal as I am, how do you know you're getting the best price? That's these are millions and millions of dollars.
That's part of CCNA, that we want to get the best product. The best price is important, but we're not bidding professionals against each other. We're getting the most qualified person to give us a good product.
Okay.
We don't want the lowest bidder building the bridge that everybody's going to be driving across, right?
Okay, and that's fine. So we've got a list of contractors, engineers of record, and, you said you offer it to the ones that are good at the job, but we must have more than one in each category that's good at the job. We don't just have one. So how do you decide which one we're going to offer the job to?
A lot of it has to do with experience and time in the seat, and learning who does good jobs for us and who doesn't do good jobs for us, or other municipalities.
But if they don't do good jobs, they shouldn't be on our list.
Correct.
So it should be only those that do good jobs that are on our list.
Correct.
So I'd like to understand, how do we offer the jobs to people on our list?
We do not have a quantifiable list with the rankings that you're looking for.
Tara Kivett, City Engineer. I'd like to just add too that, the consulting firms, especially the larger ones, actually all of them, they can have a high turnover in staff. So they may do a great job on one type of project, and then 3 years later, we have that same type of project, may reach out to them, but as staff changes, mistakes happen. There is no perfect set of design plans, and so things happen. So even when our professionals make some mistakes, we have to consider how they address those mistakes. And if they do it well, then typically we're willing to continue to work with them. If they address those mistakes poorly, then we would not use them again.
Okay. So,
but it's definitely, I want to reiterate what Elliot said, it is qualification-based, not price-based.
But I care about price, because those are taxpayer dollars. Qualifications is first, right? Yep, you got to be qualified minimally. And then I want somebody to give me...
Right, but that's why you have an engineering department with people that are professional engineers, have some engineering experience. We believe we have the expertise to pick the appropriate firm.
Okay, all right. I think it would help, though, to see, like maybe over the last 3 or 5 years, how many contracts were awarded to the engineers of record, to see if, are they bunching up with just these people? Are these people that remain on the list don't get, offered projects, or, I don't know,
We also have separate categories, even though they're all on the list, like we have some environmental firms that do good at brownfields and site remediation. They're not skilled in the street projects.
Right.
And we picked a couple of specific marine and aviation firms this year and some building and maintenance people. And they may not they're not going to get a street project. We're not going to give them one. So it kind of just depends on what their skill set is.
And I think just to have an articulator that just says, does not specialize in marine and aviation, or does not do, this type of work, or whatever. Or out of the 3 firms that do this type of work, we believe, they have an on-time record, they've done quality work with us before, and they've not asked for price increases.
But don't you already do that? I mean,
Yes.
isn't the reason you
we
have
do.
a list of 56, because as you said, there are people who are experts in certain areas and not in other areas?
Yes, we didn't
And-
take all of them.
I mean, I guess my question is, in all due respect, I mean, we've had discussions before about trusting the experts. These are the experts. Why are we trusting them?
I do trust, I just want to understand exactly, why it was chosen, and just have that listed. Especially, I think if you're an engineer on the record, and you're not getting asked for business, it's like, well,
Well, then, I guess you say, take me off the record. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't think because you're on the record, it means that you have to have business if there are people who are doing the jobs, doing them on time, on budget, and easy to deal with. And I think that's what our experts are doing. I haven't heard or seen any complaints over the years about you guys hiring people that are doing terrible jobs and continuing to hire them. And, so I'm not quite sure where this is all coming from.
I worry about when we have an engineer of record and they get a job without a bid, how are we ensured that we are paying, that we're being fiduciarily responsible to our taxpayers, that that's a very competitive bid?
That's what they do. That's
It's
their
Florida
job.
statute that you cannot bid them
Over 10%?
against each other over price.
Well, you can't bid them against each other.
Right. So the way professional services is procured is the CCNA Act. And keep in mind that these are not large projects. These are projects under $4 million construction value. So these days with the construction prices, we don't actually use them all that often anymore. Most projects have a project-specific design RFQ that we must advertise and select
I
accordingly.
think Mr. Margolis has something to say.
Talking about the procurement process for construction projects, because they are, big dollar amounts, typically 7 figures, sometimes even 8-figure projects that we get into. So we have there's a lot to unpack there, but I would say the core of the state law, which, as Ms. Kivitz said, is called the CCNA, it's the Consultants Competitive Negotiation Act. It's a state law that regulates how state government and local government procure construction and engineering services, which are all big dollar contracts. That state law, in my opinion, is much more favorable to contractors than it is to the government. Make of that what you will. But it's a process that is pretty well suited to the industry, I guess I would say, perhaps not as favorable to taxpayers. Among other things, that state law prohibits local government from forcing contractors to bid against each other, because that's what I would love to do. In any normal circumstance, in order to conserve taxpayer dollars, if we've got a good company who's bidding way up here, sure, we might like their work, but if they're astronomically expensive, I'd love to say, hey, what about this guy over here who says he's going to do it for this price? Certainly, if any of us were doing a home improvement project, that's exactly what we would do, to renovate our bathroom or a kitchen or things like that. But in state law, that tool is not available to us. So the question then is, what can we do? Because that's not a tactic that we can use in order to save money. The way it's set up in state law, generally speaking, we will have to identify a firm that we want to negotiate with first. And that is a lot of where that expertise comes in from public works, public utilities, the departments, because the truth is that most of us, myself included, are probably not going to know which of these 57 firms is the best firm for this sidewalk project. or this utility project. We just don't have that expertise other than through staff. So that's the first part of it, is figuring out which firm can actually do the work. But in many cases, there will be more than one firm that's capable of doing the work. So the question then is, if, let's say, there are 3 firms that Elliott knows are capable of doing this work on the list, there is a legitimate question as to how we choose one firm over another to be that firm we want to negotiate with. And there is some subjectivity in there, but that is actually something that I'm talking with staff about, because I do think that it would benefit everyone, both our contracting partners as well as the city, if we have a little bit more formality there in terms of why someone is selected versus another. I think sometimes that's obvious to staff, but it's not always obvious to the council or to the public. So I think that's probably an area that we can discuss with our new ACM and our new Public Works Director. The final part of that is once we identify a particular contractor to negotiate with, the CCNA requires us, and by us I kind of mean collectively, the city, staff, to negotiate a price that we, and by we, the city, think is fair, competitive, and reasonable. It is pretty open-ended, and there definitely is a lot of trust, not just in Clearwater, but in any city, right, or any local government, that has to be placed on staff to negotiate that contract in a way that's competitive. State law does say that if the contract terms are not acceptable to the city, then the city is entitled to, and in fact is required to, terminate negotiations with the number 1 company and then go to number 2 and number 3 on that list. So there is a mechanism. Let's say, for example, there's a company who bids an astronomical price, but they do good work, but the pricing is just absolutely ridiculous. Either staff could terminate negotiations with that company, or the council always has veto power. And if the council says this is just not amount of money that you're comfortable spending, no matter how good they are, or that's just not a good use of resources, council could also say, not approving this, terminate negotiations with this company, and go on to number 2. And so those are the mechanisms that are in place. It's not as strong a mechanism as I would love to see, but that's the mechanism that's in state law, and that's those are the checks and balances that we have available to us.
Okay, fair enough.
And we do exercise that option. We terminate, it's probably one every 2 or 3 years. It's not a lot of them. But if there's ones that we can't get to an agreement with and it keeps going in circles and the prices are high, we'll cut our losses and move on.
Okay. Anything else?
David wanted to say something.
You have something?
Did you want to say something?
Well, I was just going to add, we're not talking about actually contractors here. We're talking about engineer of record, architect kind of things. I mean, that's a design component, and it's not always, it's hard to, and these guys, design is included in that. So, you can't bid one against another because they come in with a particular design of what you're going to go with. You look at what they've done before, and you look at their, I guess, too, also, the reason why you want to have several is you don't know what their workload is. If they say, yeah, we'd love to do this job, but we got to get next December we can start, That's why you have a bunch of them. So I think that's a little bit different than a contractor of record where once you've got the design that you can go out and you can say, okay, what are you bidding toward this particular design? So I don't have a problem getting, pre-qualified people on there for the design portion of it.
Okay.
Thank you for
Anything
that
else?
explanation.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Consent on this one?
Mayor?
Yes.
Can
Yes,
I
sir.
bother you 1 minute?
Yes.
Before Elliot leaves, this is probably his last meeting. He is going to be retiring from the city. I would like to point out that we're very grateful for his career. He's done nothing but shown the highest level of integrity and scrutiny as he's managed our projects and made sure that he has been a good fiduciary, and we're grateful for his service. We wish him the best of luck. His team is top-notch, and we're going to miss him.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ellen.
Congratulations. Best wishes. Okay, 7.3, please.
Approve the drainage easement conveyance request from Dolphin Harbor Development of Island Estates.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council members. Robert Kasmer, Public Works Engineering. Before you today for consent review is a drainage easement request, conveyance request from Dolphin Harbor Development, 125 Island Way. In brief, this will be the third request on this development during its improvement status. This easement is roughly 10 feet by 92 foot, perpetual drainage easement to the city. The first easement in question, or that was placed, was to vacate an existing stormwater easement. The second action was to then place that easement over the existing stormwater pipe on the northern border. And the third action today is needed to connect the easement of now to the current right-of-way infrastructure. When the developer went to connect this easement, there were too many utilities in the way. He could not do that and cross directly onto the road. He then had to parallel south on the property to the closest point where he could connect, and that's what this represents. Again, this additional easement is necessary to avoid all existing city utilities. All said utilities will be placed within this easement, and city staff has reviewed and approved this request.
Okay, questions or comments? Anyone? Consent?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
7 point, let's see, where are we here? I'm losing track here. 7.4, please.
Approve supplemental 1 work order to meet and hunt for the citywide transportation mobility assessment.
Good afternoon. Thank you for your time. As been mentioned a number of times, the city of Clearwater is growing. Lots of new developments, lots of proposed developments that are getting built and turning into existing developments. And so the agenda item today is basically to extend the contract for meet and hunt to incorporate those proposed developments that are now existing, as well as the new developments and new hotels that are being proposed, that they would be built into our traffic model so we can forecast both existing and future conditions, traffic conditions.
Any questions or comments on this one? Yes.
So this seems like a whole lot of throughout the city, kind of a catch-all for $146,000, which isn't that much. So it seems, I had a question about, can we get all of this analysis throughout the city for $146,000? And why wasn't this type of work included in the original or initial contract?
So this is a supplemental agreement, so they have been working on this for almost 2 years. So they've done a lot of work, and the model that they have prepared is being used on DOT and county projects now. So we are working with other stakeholders and other entities with the work that they've been doing and that they're continuing to do. And so when I put this supplemental agreement, I asked Meet and Hunt to provide justification that they would be able to get it done, and they were able to provide that. So I have been provided the assurance that they will be able to. But as the city continues to grow, there's stuff that we won't be able to forecast. We don't know every single proposed development that's being built, or, as things come along, you have to continually update your models so that you're understanding how the traffic is being, how people are getting from place to place.
So under the list of references on, the attachment, you don't have a reference to the Forward Pinellas 2050 Long-Range Transportation Plan? And it's now under development, and it should be adopted, it's scheduled to be adopted by October of next year. Should be substantially completed by May or June of next year. And they just finalized their countywide population and employment projections to 2050, including updated numbers approved by Clearwater planning staff. So are you going to be consulting that Forward Pinellas 2050 long range?
Certainly, we will have that. The information that's available, we will certainly build that into the model.
Okay. There's language in there that says the Multimodal Transit Center discusses the mitigation measures about increased traffic with that multimodal center that's coming on Myrtle. So are the city and the PSTA in alignment with, making, it's kind of a silly question, but in working together to make that as smooth as possible? Like, we're really positive and excited about that multimodal center that we've asked for grant funding for years and years and finally got it. So it's a positive?
Yeah, we've had a number of meetings already with our consultant, as well as Pinellas County, as well as PSTA, and it has been a positive.
Positive?
Yeah, with information flowing back and forth. we haven't really run into any issues where information's being withheld.
Okay. And then, at the end of this report, the extra $146,000 or whatever, are you going to come up with a specific set of multimodal transportation projects that we can prioritize? Is that the goal?
Yeah, that is part of it. If, I believe, on the back half of the attachment, that's one of the things that they identify is the part of understanding how the traffic is flowing and how people are getting from place to place. They help us prioritize which projects are more necessary and which ones can kind of be put off.
Okay. Just wanted clarification on those numbers, especially with the 2050 plan that are, in place for Clearwater right now.
Anything else on this item? Consent.
Yes.
Thank you. Fire department, please.
Authorize a purchase order to Bausch Enterprises for the purchase of beach lifeguard towers for Clearwater Fire and Rescue.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. Scott Ellis, Fire Chief, Clearwater Fire and Rescue. The item before you is request for the purchase of lifeguard towers for Clearwater Fire and Rescue beach lifeguard personnel in the amount of $143,625 pursuant to an invitation to bid 35-23 with Bausch Enterprises Incorporated. Since the transformation of Beach Walk, the current towers have been made from post and beam, which over the years have constant exposure to the wind and salt air as well as needed movement during storms. The towers are deteriorating. Last year, for example, during some of those storms, we have to move those towers back so as the water comes up, they're not destroyed even more. That movement itself flexes the tower to a point where the post and beam starts to deteriorate. Several have been replaced, but the costs have increased. To continue to look at efficiencies, it was noted that many locations providing beach lifeguards throughout the coast of Florida have moved to an aluminum frame tower for durability and low cost, including the beach where the original design of the current towers that we have right now came from. Earlier this year, we requested bids as part of the procurement process, and Bausch Enterprises was the sole respondent. The request is for 3 towers at the cost of $143,625, which would come from the capital improvement project for lifeguard towers. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions or comments on this item? Yes, ma'am.
Quick ones. Is this the same price or close to it that the county paid for the same kind of structures?
Very similar. Actually, we looked at in the procurement process the Martin County contract, and the price given to us on this one is actually better than Martin County one. So that's it.
Great. And I guess that leads to my second question. Is there a piggyback opportunity with anybody, or the price is so good we don't really need one?
No, we looked across the state on any of those, and that's why we had to go out for a bid. Of course, on the backside, I'm sure they'll piggyback off ours. So.
And then the last question, is there any vulnerability of lightning strikes with aluminum structures out there?
No, not with the aluminum structures, no.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Council, may it go on consent?
Oh.
It doesn't say consent, but it can go.
Okay, consent?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. 8.2, please.
Reappoint Mr. Rick Stucker to a 4-year term to the trustee of the Clearwater Firefighter Supplemental Trust Fund.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioner. My name's Tom Jensen. I'm the Plan Administrator for the Supplemental Trust Fund. The item before you is a reappointment of Mr. Rick Stucker, city resident, to our board. State statute requires that we have to have 2 residents serve as trustees, and Mr. Stucker has been one of those probably since the late 80s. Luckily for us, he's expressed another interest in continuing his service on the board. So.
Great. Got questions or comments? Consent?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Number 9, planning, please.
Approve the annexation initial future land use map designation of residential urban and initial zoning atlas designation of low medium density residential for 1221 Sunset Point Road.
Thank you, Kyle Brotherton, Planning and Development. This voluntary annexation request was passed on first reading last year on July 21st, 2022, and it involves a 0.137 acre property consisting of 1 parcel of land. Second reading of this annexation has been delayed because the applicant was constructing a single-family dwelling on this parcel under the county's jurisdiction. Construction has been completed and a certificate of occupancy has been issued, so second reading can now take place. And then due to the amount of time that has passed since first reading, we will have newer ordinance numbers assigned, and we will have a third reading at the August 3rd meeting.
Okay, questions or comments? Okay, thank you. 9.2.
Approve the annexation initial future land use map designation of residential urban and initial zoning atlas designation of low medium density residential for 1219 Sunset Point Road.
Thank you, Kyle Brotherton. So this request is similar to the previous one. Again, this was passed on first reading on July 21st of 2022, and it also involves a 0.137 acre property consisting of one parcel of land. Construction was occurring in Pinellas County for a single-family dwelling, and a certificate of occupancy has now been issued. Due to the time that has passed, new ordinance numbers have been assigned, and we have a third and final reading scheduled for August 3rd.
Any questions on this one? Thank you. 9.3.
Approve the annexation initial future land use map designation of Industrial Limited and initial zoning atlas designation of Industrial Research and Technology for 1786 North Hercules Avenue.
Thank you, Kyle Brotherton. So this voluntary annexation petition involves a 0.3 acre property consisting of one parcel of land occupied by a warehouse and an office. The property is located on the west side of North Hercules Avenue, approximately 200 feet south of Calumet Street. The applicant is requesting annexation in order to receive sanitary sewer and solid waste from the city. The applicant has paid the city's sewer impact fee and assessment fees in full and is aware of additional costs to extend city sewer service to the property. The property is not conforming with regard to lot area and lot width, and has numerous non-conforming site conditions. Any future development or redevelopment of the site can be accomplished through a comprehensive redevelopment info project, should they wish to do that in the future.
Questions or comments? Thank you. 9.4.
Council members, item 9.4 is being continued to August 17th. Staff is working with the applicant. They found a more beneficial process for the applicant.
Okay, thank you. Information technology.
Authorize a purchase order to CDW-G for Cisco hardware and software solutions.
Mayor, council members, Dan Mayer, Director of IT. This item is for what we call back office hardware. It includes servers. It's a unified platform, what we call a Blade server, and also has switching and memory equipment. I would also point out that the ask is also that you approve the lease purchasing authority for this item, since it's well over the threshold amount.
Okay, any questions or comments on this item? Consent?
Yes.
Thank you. 10.2, please.
Approve a purchase order to Oracle America for software maintenance in a not-to-exceed amount of $180,645.39.
Council, we have used Oracle for the past 20 years in various roles across our enterprise, both the database and several of their applications. This is an annual renewal we do. This is how they do their pricing, so we're not able to use a multi-year because they adjust their maintenance on an annual basis.
Questions on this item? Consent? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Marine aviation.
Approve a second amendment and second extension to the water taxi services contract with Clearwater Ferry Services.
Afternoon, Mayor, Council, Eric Gandy, Marine and Aviation Director. With me today is Trish Rodriguez from Clearwater Ferry Services, Inc. So, a couple months ago, with the impending completion of the Coachman Park project, Clearwater Ferry approached us to have a conversation about extending their agreement and making some amendments to the agreement to facilitate transits back and forth from Clearwater Beach to the Harbor Marina. So our relationship started with Clearwater Ferry. They've been our sole provider since 2016 for this service. The last couple of years with the construction of the park being underway, as well as the ending of the original subsidies for the service, they were providing limited service based on reservations and reduced the number of employees, and we're operating in those conditions. Well, we knew the park was coming online, and the city's had a long-standing relationship with them and a consistent desire to have an alternative form of transportation to and from the beach. And that being said, I've used the Disney analogy time and time again, but certainly there is a situation whereby you're staying at hotels in Disney, you use ferries, trains, monorails, and things like that to get back and forth. And what we've noticed with our tourists at the beach is there's a consistent desire to do something else. What else can we do after a period of time? You know, they've looked for alternative things to entertain themselves and their families, and with the opening of the park, we think that is timing for that type of activity, and we engaged in conversations with the ferry. The initial ask was for an extension of 10 years with the subsidy occurring throughout the term of the 10-year term. And we had some additional discussions on this and really settled on the fact that if we were going to activate downtown, use this park as a catalyst and have that increased demand, the profitability and the ability to be self-sufficient would flesh itself out in a much shorter time frame. For that reason, we settled on a subsidy of $500,000 over the first 5 years. The first couple of years are $150,000 a year, and then the remaining $200,000 is divided over the last 3 years. So we amended the routes, and specifically we're looking at 23 transits to and from the beach and the harbor. So that's 23 transits a day, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, for the next 10 years. So when I looked at that, I felt that it was important to kind of let you know how we were evaluating this. And I crunched the numbers, and if you look at the 10-year term, we're looking at subsidizing them $13.93 per transit over the 10-year term. So that's really the simplest explanation of how we viewed the subsidy and what we are buying for that subsidy. It's guaranteed routes, guaranteed times, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, when we anticipate the park being the most active. So I'm certainly here to answer any questions as it pertains to the amendments and the extension, and Mrs. Rodriguez is prepared to answer any operational questions you may have related to this agreement.
Questions or comments? Anyone? No? Okay. Consent?
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was easy. Congratulations on your state grant too, by the way. Public utilities.
Authorize a purchase order to W.W. Granger for the purchase of maintenance, repair, and operating supplies in a not-to-exceed amount of $350,000.
Good afternoon, Council and Mayor. Rich Gardner, Director of Public Utilities. The item before you is a purchase order with W.W. Granger for the purchase of various maintenance, repair, operating supplies used in water and wastewater systems. It's a piggyback off of Florida Department of Management Services contract. This is a one-year contract for $350,000 through June 30, 2024. I'm asking for your approval and happy to answer any questions.
Questions or comments on this item? None? Consent? Thank you. 12.2, please.
Approve supplemental work order 3 to Black and Beach for SCADA Master Plan Project Management Services.
Good afternoon. Excuse me, my name is Jeremy Brown, Engineering Manager for Public Utilities. This project is a master plan for public utilities supervisory control and automated data acquisition systems. That's also known as the SCADA systems. The various utility systems include potable water, wastewater, and reclaimed water facilities such as treatment plants, booster pump stations, wastewater pump stations, well fields, and Pinellas County interconnects. Due to our resources and the complexity of the project, the city decided to ask a consultant to help manage the project on behalf of the city. The work order before you today is to provide additional project management services to account for the expected duration of the project. I'm happy to respond to any questions.
Any questions or comments? No? Okay. Consent on this one?
Yes.
Thank you. 12.3, please.
Award a construction contract to TLC Diversified in the amount of $7,933,000 for Lift Station 16.
Good afternoon, Jeremy Brown, Engineering Manager. The simplified version is this project consists of demolishing the current lift station and constructing a new, larger lift station, and it's relatively close to it, located at the western end of Pierce Street. I'm happy to respond to any questions, or I could go into a little further detail about the project if you'd like.
Any questions? Anyone? Yes, sir.
So that's the one at really the bottom of the CMA property, where that little...
Correct. Yeah, exactly. Right by the retaining wall, kind of.
Yeah. Okay, putting a bigger one in there?
We did our wastewater collection master plan, you may recall us talking about over the last couple of years, and that recommended we upsize that lift station, and so that's what we're doing.
Okay. Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
I just, as I was reading, this agenda item, Jeremy, it just made me think that of a previous conversation we had about there are a number of, and I guess we don't know the number of private lift stations in the city. And if it cost us $8 million for that lift station, I'm thinking the private ones aren't as big as that.
They're not nearly.
Not even.
This
Okay.
is one of our larger ones,
But,
absolutely.
I mean, I worry about, we need to have an inventory of those private lift stations and what's the permitting process and who monitors them and all that stuff. It's coming.
Yeah, and we agree. That's why we were happy that you approved the item a month or a couple months ago. I forget when it was. And our consultants actually beginning that
Work on
process.
all that. Okay. Great.
Anything
Thanks.
else? Consent on this one? Thank you very much. City Clerk.
Reappoint Stephanie Chill to the Sister Cities Advisory Board with a term to expire July 31st, 2027. Council members, Ms. Chill is the designated Sister Cities representative, and there are no other representatives for that category to fill this vacancy.
Okay. Any comments on this?
She looks great.
Sounds good. Consent? Thank you. Next item.
Reappoint Deena Stanley to the Marine Advisory Board with a term to expire July 31st, 2027. Ms. Stanley was serving an unexpired term, and she is willing to be reappointed for a full term.
Okay. Any comments on this? Consent? Thank you. Next item.
Appoint an individual to the Parks and Recreation Board with a term to expire July 20, 2027. Ms. Tuttle had served 2 complete terms. Unfortunately, she was not willing to reappoint, but luckily we had other individuals who were interested. So in your agenda packs, you have applications for Angelica Lonesome and Patricia Dalton for your consideration.
Okay. Yes, sir.
I have not been able to open Patricia Dalton's submission.
I wasn't either.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm not either right here.
It's, okay.
It was blank. But I did note that Angelica Lonesome has a child. She's also spoken before the council as part of her, I think, a capstone project about parks near her part of the community, which is out east of 19 a little bit. And she's studying public policy and did kind of a project on parks in our community, which I thought was, lend itself to serving on this board pretty well.
Does council want, since I'm able to see the application, but since individuals were not able to see Ms. Dalton's application, do we want to continue that discussion until Thursday?
Yeah, because I get the unknown error, encountered unexpected error, code 410.
I was able to see it, and it was
I got it.
Okay.
I'm able, okay.
only, so, okay. You want to continue?
We can continue it.
Okay.
That'd be great.
All right, we'll continue that. Thank you. City Attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. 14.1 is our outside counsel to represent us in the Bread and Roses Vehicle Safety Zone lawsuit. I know I've discussed it one-on-one with council members. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Not too many in public, hopefully.
Consent?
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you. Next item.
14.2 is a recognition of the Communication Workers of America, CWA, as the bargaining agent for a lot of positions. CWA has been the union here for a long time in Clearwater. However, the last time that we went through a formal recognition process was 1975. A lot of our positions have changed since then, different titles, some things added, some things deleted, and this was just a process that we did together with CWA to make sure that the correct positions are in the unit and correct positions are deleted from the unit. That's pretty much it.
Any questions, comments? Okay. Next item.
14.3 is to increase the mayor and council members' salaries. I know this is something that's been discussed at length both here as well as the charter review. Pursuant to our city charter, this can take place by ordinance. If passed by council, it will be effective after the next election.
Questions or comments? Okay, next item, please.
14.4 through 14.7 are all second readings, so they're all issues that the council has heard before, but glad to answer any questions.
Any questions? Okay, thank you. City manager reports.
Good afternoon. So I wanted to provide an update as how the recycling negotiations are going. And as you recall, we started negotiations in terms of doing RFQ and back in March, the beginning of March. And so I'm happy to report that as of this week, we do have a verbal tentative agreement with one of the firms that did respond to that. And so now we're in the process of developing a contract with them. It'll go through, both sets of attorneys, and then we will bring that forward. So we're anticipating that will come at the August 14th and 17th meeting. So as long as it's able to develop the contract and that get through both teams of legals, that's when we will bring that forward. We do, even though we're in negotiations, we are continuing to recycle and are doing so. I think we're up to almost 4,000 tons of recycling for the year so far. So we are absolutely recycling. And then I just wanted to remind council and the public that when we started discussing the negotiations and going into an agreement for recycling, the direction at that time was for us to bring back the conversation about refunds and or credits with that contract. So we are staying that course. Certainly the credit conversation has not been forgotten. It's just been that was what the direction was. And so we will anticipate that we are doing both whenever we are ready to bring forward that contract, which we're anticipating to be at that August meeting. We did, as we're continuing to learn about recycling and how different vendors process things differently, we did take down our contamination rate from the website, and that's just because we need to have a better understanding of how that vendor processes and what they qualify as contamination rate in order for us to be comfortable in terms of, putting that out there that those are our numbers. So as we continue to work through with the vendors and get an agreement, we'll get that understanding and put those rates back up there.
Okay. Anything else?
The only other thing I wanted to say, and I know council wants to do this as well, is just provide recognition to the teams that played a part in opening up Coachman and what a success that was, and recognizing it was hot, it was really hot, and just had so many compliments in terms of the staff and how they handled that. And there's a lot of them that participated, pretty much every department. So just wanted to express appreciation, which I know you all do too.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
I went there 3 times a day and took showers in between, and all the staff were there all day long with a smile on their face. And I think they went above and beyond. It was almost superhuman how they worked. It was incredible to watch. And I want to give props to whoever did the logo for the free t-shirts. Incredible branding, easily recognizable, beautiful artwork. So kudos to whoever that artist is and whoever chose that artist.
Any other comments? I unfortunately wasn't here for a lot of it. I was here for the opening. I think I did about 150 interviews that week, and I'm glad we talked about connecting the waterfront with the ferry, and did it for 10 years. I think I said that about 500 times that week. Yeah. But I've heard nothing but great things. We got a great letter yesterday I did from a gentleman in Tampa that brought his family over, just gushed about how awesome it was, and this is a Tampa resident, again, Clearwater, see Coachman Park, and the 4th of July, and I guarantee based on he'll be back every year, and he'll be telling people. And I sent it out. I appreciate that everyone sends that out, and congratulates everyone that was involved, because it was good stuff. Thank you. Okay, city attorney verbal reports.
Nothing right now.
So I have something for you. We talked about this, and we got an email this morning, which was very timely, about civility when citizens come up to discuss items, especially items not on the agenda. I've been talking to the city attorney about that, and the city manager a little bit, primarily the attorney. He brought it to my attention a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if he's had the conversations with anyone else here, because he's not allowed to tell me that, but basically, will you take it from here and discuss what we've discussed and how you think this should go if we decide to go ahead and go in that direction?
Sure. I think Clearwater deals with the challenges of a lot of cities deal with when it comes to running our public meetings, which is the fact that the primary purpose of the meeting is to hold the meeting. The primary purpose of the meeting, it's not a town hall per se. The purpose is for the council to get through the agenda, to discuss items that are on the agenda, and to hear from the public on items that are related to the agenda. There is no inherent constitutional right or statutory right in Florida for citizens to be commenting on things not on the agenda, and it's okay to allow that. I mean, it's good to encourage robust discussion, but it's not a constitutional issue. The reason it's not a constitutional issue is because the whole purpose of the meeting is to have the meeting. It's not to discuss things that aren't on the agenda. It's so the council can actually hear from people for items that are on the agenda. And the more time we spend on things that aren't on the agenda, it takes time away from council actually talking about the agenda and hearing from citizens who are talking about the agenda. So the whole point is to focus on the agenda. To the extent that citizens to be heard are allowed for things not on the agenda, which again is perfectly commendable because it does encourage robust discussion, it does provide an alternative avenue for people to be heard, either who may not email or may not feel like they're heard by email, et cetera, don't want to pick up the phone, or just want to address the council as a body. I think it's commendable to allow that. However, it is reasonable for Clearwater to consider some decorum rules associated with that, particularly, again, for items not on the agenda. For items not on the agenda, I would certainly feel comfortable from a constitutional standpoint if the council wanted to adopt a decorum rule. For example, I have seen local government entities in Florida adopt a rule for, again, citizens to be heard, not on the agenda, to only address their comments to the chair, which in this case would be the mayor, to refrain from personal attacks and things of the like. Again, for items not on the agenda. For items on the agenda, I would not be as comfortable with that, but since the purpose of the meeting is to discuss the agenda, it's in a different category. This issue has been litigated rather extensively in various local governments in Florida. So if the council would like to implement a decorum rule, I do think we have to assume that someone will probably put us in litigation with this, but I am comfortable with it. I don't have a problem defending it. I think that it has been successfully defended in other communities. For example, the Brevard County School Board had to litigate this issue. Other school districts have had to litigate it. So I don't have a problem with it if that's the direction the council would like to go, so that we can spend less time on some of the distractions and more time actually hearing from citizens on the agenda and actually having more robust discussion among council members for the agenda. But that said, that's a discussion for council to consider. It does not have to be a decision today or this minute, but just something for the council to consider. And if I get that direction, then I will draft a resolution to amend the council rules in that regard.
What's your pleasure?
I have been very fond of the open access to come and talk about anything. If we're worried about some of the language, some of the personal attacks, I can understand. You know, I've had my fair share of them over the years, and they roll right off me. But I can see where, you know, we've got one or two people who are targeting folks on the council. So.
Yeah, and yes, sir.
I just don't want to see, and I haven't been, I feel kind of left out because I haven't been personally attacked, but
your
I probably will be
coming.
after today.
There you go.
But I really feel that I've seen, you know, some of the other people that have been here that want to get up and say legitimate things and don't do it after some of the people get up that attack, you know, and use, I say bad language, you know, they get a little shy about coming up and like, okay, I'm not going to follow that guy. So I don't know how you would do that necessarily. I think if you could bring something back, we can maybe discuss it as to how far we want to go on it. I do think it's a good time for people that have any issue to come up and talk to us about it, as long as it's not an attack or, you know, something that is legitimate. So I'd like to see what you have in mind and then discuss it at that point.
Okay.
I would like to see what that looks like too. I mean, I've gone on record several times about discussing the issue and not making it personal. And it is hard to be on the receiving end, and I think we are sending a message that anything goes. If we're going to have, you know, if we want robust conversations, we want to hear from our citizens, I think we have to give them a safe environment as well. And if we encourage the environment where it's combative and uncomfortable, I think we're infringing on other people who would like to communicate.
Right.
So I'm not quite clear on what that looks like at this point. I would like to think about it a bit more.
Okay, fair enough. Any other? Same way. I mean, I'm the new person here, and a lot of people are watching the meetings now that maybe weren't because I'm here, and they just say, how do you put up with that? And you're supposed to be there to talk about business or talk about problems, but not personal attacks, not be called names, juvenile names, just stupid stuff. And people are noticing, and it's that they don't like it. So I think we need to do something, and something within reason. I'm not trying to stop public comment. Public comment is welcome and encouraged, it's a legitimate item and, you know, whatever it is, as long as it's public on. But coming up and calling people names and attacking them is just juvenile, and there's no place for it here. And I think we should look at that and go from there.
Sounds like I'm hearing certainly from a clear majority of council that there's at least enough interest to bring forward an item, and then council could always adjust the language, but if it's council's pleasure, I can draft a resolution just to bring it to your attention, and then council can discuss it, refine it as appropriate.
And I know we won't be the first place to do that.
Certainly not the first place.
Okay. All right, thank you. Anything else? All right, council discussion item 17.1, the new city hall, named after William B. Horn II. Discussion on that? Are we going to talk about that on Thursday night, or you want to talk about it now? Yes?
I know we kind of brought it up last meeting, and, you know, Bill was here an awful long time, and I thought he, for the most part, did an exceptional job as city manager, and I don't have an issue at all about naming the new city hall William Horn in honor of him. I think we even, I'm thinking 3 or so years ago, Jim Smith, I think in one of the Ruth Eckerd things, we said that we'd like him to make a bust of Bill, you know, and that would be a perfect thing to put in the city hall, you know, as you walk in. So that's just my opinion.
Other comments?
I thought it was a terrific idea when you brought it up, and I'm all for it.
I agree.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? So we have to finalize this on Thursday, or is this just kind of you've heard
I
our
think there's a majority. I think I'm okay
intentions.
with it,
Okay.
with the consensus.
Do we need public comment on it?
There's no motion if there's consensus, or there's...
Okay.
The way I would, procedurally, I would just picture this coming the next time that the next time the City Hall project actually comes before you to approve it as part of that.
Okay.
That would be my recommendation.
Fair enough.
Procedurally.
Fair enough. 17.2, council wet zone for 400 and 500 Cleveland Street.
Yes, so Goshen Park has proven, thank goodness, to be the catalyst that we much needed. But I really want to forge ahead, so the thought, well, some people came up to me during that week of opening and brought it up, and I kind of referred to the sip and stroll events that we had downtown, which were very successful, and having a wet zone in the 400 and the 500 block. However, I really would like to have input from the police department, Parks and Rec, and any other staff in how that's going to look like, whether it's just restricting it to 2 days a week, Friday and Saturday, or just on concerts only. I do want to limit any negative consequences to it. However, I think we can successfully do it with the right, the right plan. I mean, some of the things that I've been kind of throwing around is that designated container, so that you know it's not just somebody bringing up a cooler of beers and just going up and down the streets randomly. But I would like the input of the police department and any other staff and see what you guys would think about how to implement a wet zone.
All right, well, going forward, Melissa Isabel, Interim Chief of Police Mike Wallach.
City legal.
We started working on this. We kind of came up with the idea of giving you guys 3 different options, and then we can kind of go from there. This is kind of new to us both. We've been doing some research for some time, but to go into it, to hit the ground running, option 1 would be just keep the existing model that we have right now, which I guess it's not going to pop up there, which would include up to 12 events per...
A PowerPoint on the computer.
That's over there. Which would be keeping the regulated to 12 a year, the special permit areas, getting that area. Option 2 would be require us to modify our existing open container ordinance to exclude the 400 and 500 block of Cleveland Street. The first issue is that downtown businesses could not use the specialty cup that was passed around. designate as in the upcoming option. The second issue is that basically it's a free reign for consumption, meaning that anybody could go to the local 7-Eleven, grab a six-pack, and bring it into the 400 or 500 block and consume it within the 400, 500 block of Cleveland Street or any other person that hangs out down there. The third issue is that it's not a benefit to downtown businesses, and instead of just reading the whole thing, basically ABT essentially issues permits to businesses allowing them on-premise consumption, so they could be subject to fines if they were allowed to take it off the premise. Those are the basics for number 2. Option number 3. Option 3 would be similar to the Tampa Riverwalk Specialty Center, the Tampa St. Petersburg Edge District, and the St. Petersburg Municipal Pier. These specialty areas are covered under Florida Statute 561.20, Section 2B, and allow for a specialty zone to be designated if it falls under certain requirements. That's the cup I'm passing around to you guys right now. That's the actual one that we've gotten from Tampa Riverwalk. Some of the specialty center requirements, it has to have at least 50,000 square feet of leasable area containing restaurants, entertainment facilities, and specialty shops, and located adjacent to a navigable water body. Alcohol beverages sold for consumption on the premise by a vendor in a specialty center may be consumed within a specialty center, but may not be removed from such premises. This is where specialty cups would come into play. So during a recent conversation, Melissa and I talked to Senior Economic Development Coordinator Phil Kirkpatrick, and we were able to identify 50,000 square feet of leasable area within the 400-500 block of Cleveland Street, and you'd have to use Coachman Park to be the adjacent navigable waterway. In addition, Tampa and St. Petersburg have established a partnership board of local business owners to determine what businesses qualify to participate in this program. Some of the pros and cons to option number 3. Pros, downtown businesses could benefit because they're the ones that are able to sell the alcoholic beverages using the designated cup that we showed you. If the businesses are open, patrons are not authorized to consume alcoholic beverage in the designated area. The hours could be regulated to be consistent with park hours or different. Specialty cups can display the designated area, such as Riverwalk in the back of the cup of which restaurants or establishments are participating. Cons, an ordinance would need to be created. Specialty cups could be removed from trash cans and reused by individuals. Pedestrians could cross Fort Harrison, obviously after drinking, that would be a concern. Additional police officers may be required to patrol the area based upon the consumption of alcohol. This would be the area that would be in coordination with that. It has to be adjacent to the waterway, so you'd include Coachman Park. This is obviously an older map, including the 400 and 500 blocks of Cleveland Street. This is the Edge District. In talking to St. Petersburg, this one is a little bit unique. They require a permit, but they use a specialty cup as well. It's only for special events. Their cup is no more than 16 ounces and must be approved by the Edge Business District. They must have a security plan that must be approved by the police chief or authorized designee prior to approval of a resolution by the city council. You see that's approved waterway. That's an approved area they actually use in Booker Creek as their navigable waterway. St. Petersburg Pier District, I think obviously you can tell that it's surrounded by water. Everyone knows that. Alcohol is permitted if it's in the pier-approved cup, which will be provided by the restaurants and cafes within the pier district. If it's not permissible, it is not permissible for alcohol to be brought into the pier for personal consumption. Again, no more than a 16-ounce cup. The pier is opens 30 minutes before sunrise, and the property closes at 11 p.m. A restaurant, Pier Tiki, remains open until midnight Sunday through Thursday and 2 a.m. on Fridays and Saturdays, in order to regulate it with a cup. And that's the conclusion of what I have to explain. It's a different process for each one. You have the option 1, where you can continue doing what we currently do. Option 2 is to take away the 405 block from the ordinance, which anybody can bring alcohol in. Or the third one is creating a area such as St. Petersburg and Tampa. I did talk to the Tampa chief prior to coming here, and he said it is heavily regulated. There is, a police presence there. I know some people have been there. Hasn't been that many problems. But anything, when you bring alcohol to a certain area, it does create some potential activity for police response. That's all I have. If you answer any questions.
Yes, sir.
So I'm a little familiar with having events on Cleveland Street and how many police you have to have in an area, you know, to, especially when you have alcohol. But this is a pretty good sized area. Would it be the 500, then crossing Fort Harrison into the 400 and then down into the park?
Correct.
So what do you think would be your estimate of extra police during those times for that size of an area?
I mean, I think it would depend on what's going on down there. I think you definitely have to have an increased police presence because you just don't know how well it's going to take off and what's going to take. But I would definitely think you need additional police officers down there. Could it be 4? That could be 4. I mean, it depends on how many restaurants and how many establishments were to open up in that designated area.
Do you think a good way to start would be just the concert, since the police presence is already there? We can start off slow, see how that goes.
The only thing I guess in that situation, we would have to craft the ordinance in a particular way, probably similar to the Edge District, which would allow it to be basically regulated by resolution that you all would decide the days of in that particular way. But I think as long as you're kind of, there's a criteria that you're equally applying to what you're choosing to open it for, I think that you could do that.
Did any of these other districts start off with try it for 6 months and see how it goes, or did they go right into it?
I'm not aware of them doing it as a trial just because of the ordinance issue. I'm sure that they did some sort of pilot program that they were willing to repeal the ordinance if necessary, which is what we could do as well. But I'm not aware of them doing, like a temporary ordinance. I don't know of an operation that we could do that in.
Okay.
I guess my question is there a need for this, or is there a public outcry for this, and what's the alcohol limit in the park? Is it strictly in the sound? You have to be inside the sound?
Yes.
I guess my concern would be people taking alcohol into the park, and I don't know. I mean, I'm not against people having a drink and having a nice time, but I don't know. I'd have to really think about the ramifications and what is or is not going to be allowed.
Right. In order to do option number 3, you'd have to include the park because it has to be adjacent to the navigable waterway.
Why is that?
It's a quirk. I don't know if
It's quirky. I mean, what does the waterway have to do with anything?
I don't.
Part of the state statute.
They have good lobbyists. I don't know.
Because we don't want to turn the park at nighttime on the weekends into a bunch of rowdy young drinkers or old drinkers, or I'm not discriminating age-wise, but we put all that money in there. It's a beautiful place, and I want people to feel comfortable coming there at any hour. And I don't know. I mean, again, I'm not against the concept, but I really want to see more details.
Not to take away anybody's decision, but with a situation like that, there is definitely, with a concert and alcohol, there is a potential for the police to have an additional presence down there.
Yes, understood. I mean, just see what happens sometimes on Clearwater Beach in the nighttime.
Yeah.
Clearwater Beach, sometimes look at Dunedin, sometimes downtown.
Yeah. And
I can continue to look at different options. Those are the 3 that we came up with. It's kind of unique in that circumstance, but at the direction of
Are there restaurants in favor of this? Because aren't they doing, they're doing a robust business now that the parks and the sound's open, aren't
So
they?
some of the feedback that I got was, let's say you want, have a drink at Clear Sky, but you really want just a regular burger at 5:30. They have to sip it fast and then go up to 5:30. With Sip and Stroll, which was over a year, we did not have any incidences. It was very controlled, but it promoted movement up and down the street.
Yeah.
And it's, I know there's a fear factor, so am I. That's why I really wanted the staff to have input, and I'm willing to consider limitations and tools put in place to minimize the risk. However, we're not reinventing the wheel. This is happening everywhere else, and we need to be competitive, and this is something that would help, because as many people have already said, going to these arenas is expensive to have a drink. But maybe they would come an hour and a half earlier and have their first or second drink here, and then go to the concert. Again, I know that there's a discomfort level, I am too, but I lived through the sip and stroll, and I didn't see any problems there.
Well, if we can limit it to something like that, then I'd be in favor of it. I'm really not in favor at this point of allowing people to take alcohol into the park at night, and I just don't think that is a good way to start out with what we just did.
So option 2 then, that excludes the park, correct?
It excludes the park, but it does not allow you to regulate where the alcohol comes from.
So meaning you could go to the store and bring a six-pack in and consume it within the 400, 500 block of Cleveland Street.
That defeats the purpose.
Can we tweak these options, or is that all we can do?
I've tried to think legally creative ways that we could accommodate this. Unfortunately, places like we've even looked into as far as Duval Street and Key West, what do they do? Orlando has Church Street that's popular at particular times. In speaking with law enforcement officers who enforce in those areas, they basically said that, they kind of turn a blind eye. There's no formalized policy. They haven't been able to come up with anything similar. So this is all I've seen legally, unless we chose to do something like that.
So how do we control sip and stroll? Because I'm not familiar with it.
Sip and stroll, basically, the whole purpose was to have people flowing down 2 streets and actually going into the restaurants. So they paid $10. They got a predetermined glass for that month. And people kept the glass because it was a nice one. And then you would go from business to business and taste 2 to 3 ounces of alcohol with their appetizer. And it forced people to go down those 2 blocks. I never could make it past fourth place because I'm a lightweight. After 4, I had to stop. But I didn't see any behavior that alarmed me. What about option 1? Is there any way we can go from 12 events and actually match that number to how many concerts there going to be?
That's an ABT regulation, and that's actually what Sip and Stroll was using. They used that special event ordinance that we currently have, but it's in conjunction with ABT to allow them to do those particular events on specialty days.
So there's only 12 allowed per year?
That's what ABT allows. And so we could do it on those 12 days, but I don't know. I assume we're hopefully going to have more than 12 concerts.
34.
I have a question about, I think it's option 2. It does not allow you to regulate where the alcohol comes from, but can't those businesses who have the seats out on Cleveland Street say, you can't bring outside alcohol into my establishment parameters? You can't sit on my chairs if you're bringing in your own alcohol.
That is correct, but you could still, someone could come sit in the median, in the grass area with a chair.
The six-pack, which is not what we want. That would scare people. Yeah, of course,
Do you think they would? I mean,
As far as you,
I think there's
always people that will do that.
okay.
it's regulated if essentially if you had dollar beer night, you're going to have everybody down there. If you're going to have $15 drinks, you're going to get a different type of person. But if you can bring your own, it's hard for me to sit here and forecast what anybody could do.
Yeah. Well, and I would think Ruth Eckerd Hall is probably not in favor of this. I mean, they want people to go down to their event early and purchase their alcohol.
I think it could be controlled. If we could control it, it could suit both entities, but I don't think I hear a clear way of doing that and having it as many times as you wish to have it.
The 34.
Can we continue kind of looking at this and bring it back, and let's talk about it? And I'd like to hear your point of view with your experience of what you think is or is not reasonable. No offense to Chief, but sorry.
My view is whatever Ms. Poyers tells me. I don't think I would have anything that would be a surprise. All the anxiety that you talk about, I have that. I've been in the seat where I've been held accountable for the family-friendly atmosphere and not wanting the things that dilute the family-friendly atmosphere.
When you and I have had these conversations over the years when I wasn't mayor about, hey, what's going on, how's it going, I hear this, and, you were pretty blunt with me about your feelings on
I brought my
stuff.
grandkids to the park on Saturday, and it was perfect.
Yeah.
It might not be the same way if it was a different type of crowd, but I am an advocate for the 400 or 500 block. I've never been able to figure out some of the constraints we have, but I'm an advocate for it. And I do have something I would like to discuss with the staff, and maybe it is another option.
Okay, fair enough.
Could you
Yes,
have like a First Friday thing, and it's open, so expand on Sip and Stroll, and it's once a month, but it's more open and engaging, and on a night that would, we could more likely have a concert at the Sound, something.
That would be within the first option.
That would be within the first option.
So just once a month.
Yeah.
But then you have to have permits, right?
Well, it goes through the city, it's permits through the city.
So it's just more processes to go through, who's gonna do it, who's gonna be accountable, blah, blah, blah. I would like to see what you're gonna come up with.
I don't know if it's a brilliant legal strategy, but it's one.
I'm willing to hear
I'm a lawyer.
it.
Let's kick it around a little bit and
Yeah.
see, reasonable people can come up with a reasonable plan.
Exactly.
And without jeopardizing what we just built, spent $84 million on. So, all right, thank you. Anything else?
Mayor, before we leave this
Yes,
discussion, I
ma'am.
just want to make sure that it's not for this Thursday. This would be for another work session that would come back.
Yeah, yes, I'm sorry. I'm
There's no rush.
sorry. Councilmember, you had an item too.
No, I didn't.
Oh,
I do on the agenda.
Yes, yes, okay. You're up.
Okay, so saving the best for last, I know everybody's, and it's serious and deep stuff, but what I did was, I made an abridged version of our point-in-time count. So each January nationally, communities that receive money from HUD go out and do a point-in-time count, it's called a PIT count, of who's homeless on that particular date. And it affects the amount of funding that we get. And so each year we have a report on our point-in-time count, and this is the 2023 report. And the Homeless Leadership Alliance. So I'm the chair of the Continuum of Care, which is throughout the county, and we contract with Homeless Leadership Alliance, HLA, that's the lead agency that serves our homeless populations and works to prevent and divert homelessness. And so I'm not going to read through this, but I'm going to, again, on the front page, I would urge you to check out at www.pinellashomeless.org, PIT data. You can read the entire report, which has graphs and charts, and it has the references that are cited in here as well, so I didn't include all that. Just wanted to really simplify. And so we count people that are sheltered, that are in shelters or hotels or transitional housing or emergency shelters, safe havens. And then we also count unsheltered people, and those are volunteers that go out. A number of our police officers go out. I go out every year, and you actually count people. You have a tablet, and it can give you the GPS coordinates if you can fill it out digitally. Some people want to fill out a survey on paper, but our sheltered count was 1,498 people were sheltered. You can tell where they were. We have all sorts of demographic data on their age, on their race, all that stuff, gender, and so you can see those data points there. Unsheltered people, so these are the people that are actually out there under a bush or in an encampment. 646 people were identified as experiencing unsheltered homelessness. We ask them a series of questions, and again, they can choose to answer or not. They can stop the survey at any time. But no surprise, the top 5 self-reported reasons for housing that was lost included, they lost a job or financial problems. That's kind of like duh. Family issues, mental or medical disability issues, eviction, jail or prison. We have data on self-reported drug abuse or mental health problems, chronic disabilities, all that stuff. And then we also take into account the jail count as well as Pinellas County school count. This Pinellas County school count is shocking. And the number is 3,768. Now, that is not on one day in January. That's what the school reports to us for that calendar year, how many students they are aware of that are not living in their own housing. So they may be in hotels, they may be, doubling up with family members or friends, or they may in fact be homeless. But that's a that's a jarring number. Our jail number is 675 people. And I did not include this in your abridged version because when we had our report on the pit, when we had the presentation of this whole report, not last Friday, but the Friday before, there was some question from Lieutenant Hayes, who is our representative from the Sheriff's Department, runs Safe Harbor, and he wanted some language included, and it was, we have the 675 people that are in jail who have self-identified as unhoused or lacking permanent housing, which is really what everyone else does. But that, I didn't take it because we hadn't, it hadn't been approved when I prepared this over the weekend for you. But anyway, the bottom line is what you need, the takeaway that you need to have, I think that's important, is that we have over 5,000 people in our county that are facing, that are homeless, that are in homes that are not meant to be their homes, either shelters or doubling up, or in homeless diversion programs. There's some information here from this introduction that was prepared by this, by T. Freeman Gearhart, who is the PhD candidate at Florida USF, who prepared this for us. There's information here about methods and data collection. Again, you know, the data is only as good as the reporting, and there are some limitations with that. So the discussion, I would ask you to take a look at the discussion here. It's important to look at the demographic information together, because what it does is it informs us on what type of programs to offer and who to target, the populations that aren't being served as well. And then the limitations are here as well. The most important part, again, you know, after we're dealt the blow of over 5,000 people that are facing this significant problem, which isn't a surprise to us, right, is the recommendations of this report. And this is where I think we need to think about these recommendations as we partner with agencies in the community, with the county, who gets a third of our tax dollars, as well as we look at our budget allocations. And so Built for Zero is the philosophy that we have enough housing that will match the people facing homelessness or eviction or something, or medical crisis and they've lost their home. We have enough housing to transition them into that they can afford. That's called Built for Zero, so there's no backup. Do we have that? No. Does it look hopeful that we're going to have it anytime soon? Probably not, but it's a stated goal. It's what our intentions are. So that's recommendation one. And one of the parts in here that I think is particularly important when we consider Clearwater is that we have like 80 or so chronic homeless that really circulate around our community, a lot of times in the downtown area. And one of the recommendations is to establish formal data sharing agreements between all providers within the COC, including those that aren't part of the COC, such as healthcare entities, but serve Pinellas County residents to share detailed person-specific information that will track these chronic homeless to help them. Now, we have to have them sign off that we can share their information and really tailor programs and projects that will speak to their individual needs, whether it's mental health, substance abuse, disability, things like that. So that's interesting. There's another recommendation that we use a plainclothed approach by law enforcement when we do conduct the unsheltered pit count, and that's feedback from people with lived experience. They feel a lot more comfortable being approached by someone in plainclothes rather than a uniform. Number 3 is design and advocacy, community outreach, and communication strategic plan with measurable outcomes to address the stigma towards stable housing initiatives and people experiencing homelessness. And apparently there were a number of years ago where Kathleen Peters, who I serve with on the opioid abatement board, had said there was a real push for education about this is the face of homelessness, to destigmatize it. And so I think they're looking at doing that and putting a face on. Actually, a lot of our people that face homelessness are actually employed. They have families, children who age out of foster care, are particularly vulnerable. So a campaign to really paint a fuller picture of what is that. Recommendation number 4 is to be proactive, creative, and collaborative when identifying and applying for different grants or opportunities and thinking outside the box. That's just encouraging new ways to think about how we're going to make progress. Recommendation 5, we are actually starting this. It's started, it's been real positive so far. This is to solicit needs from those with lived experience and non-clinical community stakeholders who frequently encounter individuals experiencing homelessness. The COC and the HLA is forming a lived experience committee. We've had 2 meetings so far. The one on June 13th or 15th was, I think I reported to you all, standing room only at Largo Central Library. And a number of people that, again, standing room only of people who lived experience. The last one we had was last Friday, and it was in St. Pete, and fewer people attended. There were about 20 of us in that meeting, and they're going to have another one in Clearwater. I think it's in August. So I would expect that Clearwater one to be pretty well attended. But we've started to do that, and that's a good thing. Kind of that philosophy, not about you, without you at the table. Adapt the point in time count survey methodology to match the community needs. Again, this is feedback from both the people who do the survey as well as people who are homeless with lived experience. Recommendation 7 is to establish user-friendly interface to publicize de-identified data so individuals, providers can access and expand upon findings. That's to take away any identifying features of the data to let us all know the full picture of people out there facing homelessness. Recommendation number 8 deals with those 675 or so that are in jail. Convene regular and sustained planning meetings with criminal justice system personnel to review policies, procedures, and strategies to address homelessness. This figures right into our funding for Safe Harbor, and what are we getting for that? What are the outcomes, and are we really making a dent when the average stay is about 3 days? The case management ratio is not adequate. So recommendation 8 is key. Recommendation 9 is to increase family outreach services in shelters to address non-homeless related parenting issues. When people are in hotels or shelters and they have children, this is an ideal opportunity to really work with them about parenting skills, about tutoring, and giving full services to their children when they're there. There's all sorts of statistics under this, that you all can read at. Again, this is abridged. If you look at the full report, you can read more. Recommendation number 10 is develop and expand formal partnerships with colleges and universities to expand outreach services, self-explanatory. And recommendation number 11, implement and strengthen the self-care initiatives for homeless service providers. Certainly it's not a surprise that that's low-paying jobs in social services. And we really need, and there's job turnover, incredible case management. I'm a guardian ad litem. I have a judicial review today. It starts at 4 o'clock at the courthouse, but usually they're delayed, so I'm hoping I can get there. But the one little guy that I've been representing had 12 case managers in 2 years. And so I'm just going to say that, taking care of people who work in social services is important, that recommendation 11. Recommendation 12 is a no-brainer, map the gaps, resources along the homeless system of care to improve targeted outreach for minority populations. And number 13 is foster partnerships across municipal boundaries with Pinellas County to improve buy-in from cross-jurisdictional leadership. I plan to share this with the Big C. I serve on that Big C now, so I can share that with those smaller communities. But it's important, the point-in-time count is a huge undertaking. We have valuable, useful data. It does have some limitations, but we need to act on it. If we're going to use resources to participate in this, we need to review the data, take it seriously, and do something with it besides, put it on a shelf and wait till next year's data. So any questions about point-in-time data?
Questions, comments? All right, we'll take a look at it. Thank you very much.
Okay, you're very welcome.
Any new business from anyone up here? Any new business? Okay, long meeting, good meeting. I just want to again reiterate what the city manager said about the hard work of the staff and everyone to make Coachman Park the huge success, the sound, the whole 6-8 days, how many days it was? It seemed like 2 weeks for a lot of you that were out there every day. But I also want to thank this council, as I said in my comments on the opening, the previous council and this council. Y'all did a lot of heavy lifting. You made the strategy out for the staff. You pointed them on what they're supposed to do to carry it out, and your vision was well thought out. You did a great job. So I hope you all enjoyed June 28th, the opening, something to remember forever, and the hard work that you all put in to make it work. So congratulations, well deserved. And I do want to close with saying it's I had to do a double take seeing you sit up here, usually you're in the back with your uniform. So welcome up here as our assistant city manager. This is between meetings, and we're glad to have you on here. Fortunate, I know these two are very much looking forward to working with you, as is our attorney and the clerk staff. So congratulations. Great meeting. We will see everyone on Thursday evening. Thank you.
Thank you.